This meeting of the Centennial School Board is called to order at 6:33 p.m. Let's see, on 6/22, and a quorum is present. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Let's see. First off, introduction of guests. Oh no, wait, do approval of agenda first. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. The agenda has been posted in board book. Are there any amendments to the agenda this time? I believe there's one.
Yes, there's actually two amendments to the agenda. We have the approval of Pal Butte Principal Jared Austin added to Human Resources approvals. And then we've also rearranged the order of reports so that the superintendent's end of year report is before the CHS Stadium Complex report.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as updated? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. The motion has, the motion's been approved. Sorry, I'm not jumping around. All right, let's get to an introduction of guests. Would you like to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Chair Solowski. So we have a special guest tonight, Leslie Van Cleek. I see Leslie's here and Leslie's screen is firing up, I believe. There she is. Great. So it would help if I turn my microphone on. It is my pleasure to share the selection of Leslie Van Cleek as the new principal of Patrick Lynch Elementary. Leslie is succeeding Jeffrey Cerveny, who is continuing his journey as an educator in the Seattle area. Leslie will assume her position as Patrick Lynch principal on July 1st. Leslie has 26 years of education experience and currently just finished serving as the Dean of Students at Alberta Ryder Elementary School in the Tiger-Tualatin School District. Prior to her current role, she served 5 years as a K-5 special education facilitator and 18 years as a learning specialist. In these roles, she's advanced her leadership experience in family engagement, multi-tiered systems of support, equitable and trauma-informed practices, building community, and a positive school climate, and more. Leslie has participated in committee work at the district level in Tiger-Tualatin that includes the District Anti-Racist Policy Advisory Committee, the Strategic Planning Advisory Committee, the Public Health Team, the K-8 Summer Programming Planning Committee, the Elementary Social and Emotional Learning Committee, and the Building Equity Coordinator Team. Leslie has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Child Development from Oregon State University and a Master of Education in Special Education from Lewis and Clark College. Additionally, she earned her principal license from Lewis and Clark College. A relational leader who strives to build on the strengths of others, Leslie prioritizes high-quality instruction and is dedicated to building a collective towards the rewarding work of educating all students. Leslie is a proud parent of an 18-year-old daughter who just graduated from high school and will be attending the University of Denver in the fall. Leslie also enjoys hiking with her dog and relishes in time with her friends. She's excited to become a part of Centennial and the Patrick Lynch communities and looks forward to getting to know staff, students, and families. She has been working already with the principal of Patrick Lynch, Jeffrey Cerveny, and the community to ensure a smooth transition to Patrick Lynch. So please join me in congratulating Leslie on her new leadership role in Centennial. And Leslie, if you have anything that you want to share with the group, besides all of the thunder that I just stole by reading your whole biography, feel free to jump in and share with us.
I don't have anything more to say about myself. That was really pretty nice. I have been working with Jeffrey. I'm going to spend another day with him on the 27th before he heads off officially for Seattle. And yeah, that's all accurate. I mean, very, very kind, but also accurate. I am super, super excited. And the cabinet has been really kind to me and really supportive, and Jeffrey's been great. And so I feel like the transition is going to be pretty exciting and also I think pretty smooth. And I appreciate the welcome.
You so much. We're excited to have you. Next up for our introductions, I've got Elizabeth Durant with us. She's the chair of the Park Rose School Board, and she's here to share a little bit about, she is, well, I'll just kind of let her jump into it and take it because she probably understands it way better than I do.
Thanks, Cheslowski. I'm the newly elected to the OSBA Legislative Policy. Oh. Okay. I'm coming to
Elizabeth, we can't hear you.
I am coming to you with my Legislative Policy Committee hat on. Are you hearing me okay? Yes? Yes, okay. So I'm newly elected. I'm position 17 on the State Association Legislative Policy Committee. So we are part of the State Association. We're of course volunteers, elected from school board membership across the state for the Multnomah region. It's me here in person and Jessica, who's from Multnomah ESD. And so we serve on the Legislative Policy Committee, and we're liaison between the districts here in Multnomah County and our OSBA lobbyists who are in Salem. So those are the folks that are paid staff who lobby on behalf of public education and hopefully elevate our voices to legislators. So what we're doing right now, of course, the legislative session in Salem doesn't start until January. It'll be a long session. I'm sure state funding and declining enrollment will be, as well as gun violence, I imagine, will be a big part of those conversations. So while it's summer, I'm taking advantage of the kind of downtime to just introduce myself to boards that I don't already know and have a relationship with. I met with PPS earlier today. They're enormous. And we're smaller. You know, Park Rose will only have 3,000 students. So we don't have the luxury of a paid lobbyist that works with us. We have Stacy Michelson from Multnomah ESD, but I'm learning a lot about kind of the bills that might be coming in the next session. And I would love to connect with, and I don't know, the question for you tonight is who might be the best person or best way for me to connect with Centennial to make sure that Centennial's voice is in the room. If we get called by OSBA, hey, there's an important hearing coming up, we need someone to testify with an on the ground relevant example in support of something, who's the best person in Centennial? So if one, you can tell me, but I'm letting you know who I am. I've shared my email with Chair Solowski, so she knows me. I'm always happy to meet for coffee and chat. We can kind of learn together if you have interest in the legislative part at the state level. So that's all I have tonight. Just wanted to meet you and offer myself as a resource too. SBA is doing great at kind of training us in how to testify and some best practices. So they're a great resource. Thanks so much for the time. Oh, and we did send out a survey. So this is a test. Like, is that a good way to connect with you? It's in your email. I think we sent it twice. I'd love to hear from you, even if you want to fill it out and say, I hate surveys. This is a bad way to connect with me. But check your email for that. And thanks again for the time this evening. I appreciate all that you do for kids here in East County. I'm your neighbor. I'm close to you. So I know it's a lot of work. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I'm going to mute. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming and checking in with us. I think that for right now, I know that we do have a few folks who are interested in legislative policy things. And so before we make any decisions, I definitely like to kind of check with the rest of the board and spend a little time with them trying to figure out who would be the best person. But I promise I'll get back to you. And I did see your survey and I will have some time to fill it out. Did everybody get the survey? Good. Excellent.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Moving on, we've got the approval of minutes. The minutes were available in board book. Are there any corrections or amendments to the minutes?
Yes, there are.
Excellent.
I was not present in that meeting until the end. So in quite a few items, it said that I voted to approve. But the only thing I was present for was the approval of the OSEA retention bonus, as well as the other bonuses that were around. The
Thank
other
you so
items I
much.
wasn't present.
Yes. Excellent. Anything else? Good to the order? Hearing no more, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It has, the previous minutes have been adopted. Next up, we've got some public forum. I'm curious, has there been any comments or anything we need to address at this point?
No,
Thank-
nothing other than what I sent you all on.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll just keep moving right along and get to reports. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Owens.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Slavsky. Cam, can you give me screen sharing ability here? Thank you. So I like to tell the board when the superintendent's report is going to be short, and I'm not going to say that tonight because it's going to be a little long. Because there's been a lot of work happening in the district, and I want to make sure to give a comprehensive review of all that we have been working on. Won't be too long, but it's not going to be short. So the 21-22 school year has been a busy one. While there were countless things that happened across the district over the course of the year, district-wide, we were focused on a handful of high leverage items that were the products and outgrowth of the district's strategic plan Destination 2023, the voter-approved 2020 bond, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Overall, I believe the important work on the organizational structure that was done this year will help set the stage for years to come. In my year-end report, I will focus on the district's progress in these key areas and will share priority areas for the future. The key areas for the 21-22 school year were the district's return to full-time in-person learning, 2020 capital bond projects, the conversion of Oliver Elementary into Oliver Middle School, the transition of 6th grade to the middle school level, the comprehensive boundary adjustment process, and the reestablishment of Destination 2023 strategies to the extent these could be reinstituted. After 17 months of virtual and hybrid learning, the district returned to providing full-time in-person learning. While this is something schools did for decades without second thought, as you know, returning to in-person learning in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic was an ambitious undertaking. Doing so required the development of and adherence to the district's return to in-person learning and continuity of services plan, which necessitated diligent implementation of layered mitigation protocols, including physical distancing and facial coverings. Schools were creative in their use of space, particularly during lunches where maintaining 6 feet of physical distancing was necessary. This required the purchase of additional tables for lunches, which were held in libraries, hallways, and outdoor courtyards. Contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine were also prominent features of everyday school life, particularly in the fall. Director of Student Services Denise Wright and retired former Centennial Principal Laura Fendel were central to the collaboration with school principals with respect to the district's adherence to these public health requirements. At our school board meetings, we regularly deliberated the district's response to the ever-changing public health recommendations around topics such as protocols for athletics, spectators, vaccination, visitors, facial coverings, and field trips. All of this took place amidst an unprecedented shortage of staffing and substitutes. We responded by offering a hiring incentive, adding additional building-based teaching positions, and implementing a diligent and time-consuming morning routine of reviewing staff absence data and redeploying itinerant and building-based staff to areas of need throughout the district. Schools responded with teachers regularly volunteering to cover one another's classrooms during their preparation time at the middle and high school levels, and also utilizing specialists, Title I teachers, English language teachers, instructional coaches, and consultants, to name a few, to provide substitute classroom coverage at all levels. This required the frequent disruption of important programming, including the cancellation of small group instruction for students most in need of focused support. We experienced a district-wide operations-based closure in the fall on the Friday after Veterans Day, a bus route failure during the Omicron wave in the winter, and a transition to short-term distance learning for a week at Powell Butte Elementary. On the whole, and in consideration of circumstances, the district's ability to maintain continuity of operations to the extent we were able to do so has been commendable. Bond projects were in full force during the 21-22 school year, led by Centennial's owner's representative, Scott Rose, Director of Business and Operations, Paul Southerton, and chronicled by Chief Communications Officer, Cassie Swenson. Substantial progress was made. Oregon law requires 85% of capital bond proceeds to be spent within the first 3 years of the sale of the capital bonds. Despite a very challenging construction environment with inflation, supply chain issues, labor shortages, and an extremely wet spring, Centennial is on track to complete this requirement up to 6 months early. Overall, bond projects are on track. Some projects, such as the gymnasium additions and tennis courts, have been delayed due to supply chain issues and weather, but some projects have been completed early, such as the track at CMS, Phase 1 middle school projects, exterior painting at Park Lane and Butler Creek, and mechanical Phase 1, which includes steam traps at CMS, Oliver Middle School, and Park Lane. Overall, bond projects are on budget, despite the aforementioned challenges of the nearly $7.5 million held in contingency for the approved bond projects. Less than $2 million of that has been used. Further, the contingency money that has been used has been exclusively for items that were outside of the scope when the projects were formed. Examples of that include tile for the swimming pool and new furniture for Oliver Middle School. As a part of the 2020 bond, Centennial voters supported the conversion of Oliver Elementary School to a middle school to support the movement of 6th grade from an elementary grade to a middle school grade level. This year, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Tasha Katsuda and Oliver Middle School Planning Principal Jeb Hubbs worked together to establish a timeline, process, and communication with respect to the 6th grade transition to the middle school level and the conversion of Oliver Elementary to a middle school starting this fall in 2022. There were several moving parts associated with the various changes, and staff engagement was an important component in helping them become informed of the changes and their impacts on staff. In the fall, Dr. Katsuda worked to establish a timeline for the process, as well as a presentation that was shared at each elementary and middle school. Conducted virtually, these informational sessions provided details about the planning and staffing process, followed by a question and answer session. Following these presentations, through the use of surveys, staff were able to indicate their interest in working at Oliver Middle School. After several collaborative meetings with union leadership, Dr. Katsuda and I developed and implemented a detailed plan for staffing Oliver Middle School, 6th grade at both Centennial and Oliver Middle Schools, and reassigning staff from Oliver Elementary to other school sites throughout the district. We executed this plan as well as other staffing, allocation, and reassignment processes in April, which is over a month earlier than normal years, so as to allow staff attention to remain on serving students, not wondering where they're going to work next year. Over the course of the winter and spring, Dr. Katsuda and Director of Curriculum and Student Learning, Maureen Callahan, and Principal Hubbs held regular middle level visioning and program planning meetings with middle school level staff to continue articulating the vision and plan for middle level programming. As a braided process with the 2020 bond in the middle school conversion processes, starting in the summer of 21, the Centennial School District began a comprehensive review of all school attendance areas in the district. The comprehensive boundary review was intended to address the following: imbalanced enrollment throughout elementary schools and the middle school in the district, the need to balance K-5 enrollment within the physical capacity of school buildings district-wide, the development on the south end of the district impacting enrollment, and informing and supporting the conversion of 6 K-5 elementary schools and the 2 middle schools with the conversion of Oliver Elementary to a middle school. Centennial School District partnered with Flow Analytics, a local consulting company specializing in data-driven boundary review services. Together, the district and Flow Analytics analyzed population forecasts, enrollment projections, and land use trends. In fall of 21, a boundary review committee consisting of parent representatives, school administrator representatives, board liaisons, district administrators, and staff convened to analyze boundary options, receive community feedback on these options, and develop a final recommendation for me to vet and bring forth to the school board for approval. Core values served as guiding principles for the development of the boundary review committee scenarios. These were developed from board policy on school attendance areas, insights gained from the land use studies, student enrollment forecasting, and community survey results. Multiple factors were considered in satisfying the objectives of the boundary adjustment, which included student body composition, current and future availability of space at a school, feeder patterns from elementary, middle to high school, and neighborhood proximity and accessibility. Additional criteria included taking a district-wide perspective by considering growth trends in enrollment forecasts, developing attendance boundaries that work to balance school capacities across all schools, minimizing disruptions and impact to special programs or special populations, consideration of transportation impacts, making efforts to maximize proximity to home and walkability and safety, working towards limiting the amount of time students are on a school bus, and viewing boundaries with an equity and demographic lens. On January 18th, parent and guardian representatives of Boundary Review Committee voted unanimously in favor of the recommendation and provided it to me. I subsequently reviewed the recommendation and together with committee representatives, presented the recommendation to the board in February. A robust and comprehensive communications plan was developed and executed utilizing multiple methods of communication to reach stakeholders. These included, but were not limited to, the superintendent's update e-newsletter, open houses, the report to the community mailer, the boundary review webpage, social media posts, school communications, and local media. A thoughtful and detailed transition plan was implemented this spring that involved communication with each family impacted by the boundary adjustments. This involved emails, phone calls, and the use of thought exchange surveys with impacted families to determine transition strategies. In addition, each school held at least one event, which was dual purposed to welcome students who are transitioning schools in fall of 22 and allow them and their families to become familiar with their new school. These events featured a school tour, information about the school, and other fun activities. Finally, and on a somewhat constrained basis, Centennial staff were able to reinstitute Destination 2023 strategies. While several of the previously mentioned organizational and structural items are the work of Destination 2023, they're not the work of every day in schools with those working with students. And honestly, the last couple of years, and this one included, were a matter of continually having the urgent eclipse what's important. So contact tracing, organizing learning for students in isolation and quarantine, scrambling for classroom coverage amid staff absences, and subbing in classrooms themselves were the everyday experience of our school's principals and staff. That said, each school did establish a continuous action plan with at least 3 focus areas drawn from the district's strategic plan. That said, given the circumstances, there has been a need to streamline our collective efforts from dozens of strategies to a narrowed set of key priorities and strategies for each of our 4 strategic plan focus areas. For this reason, a Destination 2023 one-pager was developed this winter and spring, as you can see here on the screen, outlining key priorities and strategies over the next 14 months through the 22-23 school year. This one-pager is intended to serve as an anchor document that helps focus Centennial staff's effort in an aligned fashion. Our streamlined strategic plan is already paying dividends in terms of focusing our collective efforts. Centennial administrators have spent the spring developing a plan to strengthen our professional learning communities format. PLCs are a research-based structure to support teacher collaboration and professional learning. Our recently adopted literacy and English language curriculums will serve as a foundation for deepening staff's implementation of effective, culturally relevant, and responsive curriculum and instructional practices. Unfinished learning dollars will help support the implementation of responsive classroom in each elementary and middle school in 22-23, which supports social and emotional learning. Each elementary school will also be participating in Playworks, which is a program that supports a structured recess for students. These are just a few examples of how Centennial will focus and deepen its strategic plan efforts in the coming year. Which brings us to 22-23. In the 22-23 school year, the district will be focused on aligning for student success, which involves integrating 6 ODE initiatives, which are currently separated out into their own silos into one comprehensive plan. This plan was touched on in my May superintendent's report and is intended to be a possible focus area for the board retreat. So I won't go into heavy detail now, except to say that the idea is to submit a plan to the state in spring of 23 that aligns 6 key areas into one plan with braided funding. Because we're already planning to revisit Destination 2023 in the interest of establishing a new multi-year strategic plan, this will provide an ideal opportunity to synergize those 2 efforts together. Overall, I see our work in the coming year being focused as follows and reflected up here on the screen. Implementing the structures established in 21-22. So implementing what we actually got done this year, 6th grade to the middle school, Oliver Middle School opening, and the comprehensive boundary adjustment. Completing our bond projects. Implementing the Destination 2023 key priorities and strategies that I just showed. Aligning for student success, which I just talked about, which is the ODE process, and strategic planning for 2023 and beyond. As was this one, the 22-23 year is shaping up to be a busy one. If this year's focus, attention, and accomplishments are any indication, it will be a year that will set Centennial up for success for years to come. Appreciate the opportunity to share with the board a year in review and areas of priority for the coming year. Welcome and invite any questions or comments you might have. And that concludes my superintendent's year-end report.
Thank you so much. That was very informative and complete. So I appreciate that. Are there any questions at this time? Director Shields.
Just a quick question about how do you feel the transition is going to go with the new boundaries? And you highlighted what happened with having the open houses at the schools and activities. What do you think first day is going to look like around the district? Was people are new bus routes and going to different schools? How does that feel?
So that's a good question. And I would say that I had this discussion with Chief Swenson last week, and she's not able to be here tonight, but it was one of those wake up in the middle of the night conversations of, I think this went well. I think we did everything that we needed to do. What do you think? And she said, I'm glad you brought that up because I was having the same feeling and I think it's going to be okay. And to me, if Cassie says it's going to be all right, and she's done all the work that she's done on it, I think we're going to be in good shape. I mean, the communication has gone out, and anyone who wasn't communicated with or we didn't get a response from got a personal phone call. Now, is everybody happy about the transition? No. Have we been getting calls to the district office about people being displeased and wanting to transfer? I see a head nodding over there, and that's Dr. Katsuda's realm. Nevertheless, people know by and large which school they're going to. And we'll just have to wait and see for the first day. Transportation's been routing around the new boundaries and the new bus routes. Those are normally established in August. And so transportation has the information that they need in order to facilitate that. We've turned in everything to the Oregon Department of Education that we're supposed to turn in terms of changing the name of Oliver and reconfiguring our elementary and middle schools to K5 and 6-8 So, there's always the risk of you don't know what you don't know and go, oh, shoot, I should have made sure to take care of that. But I think we're in good shape.
Thank you so much. That does lead me to just want to follow up with one little thing as a parent. I think one thing as we start out the new school year that I don't know if all schools or some schools do is informing parents of like the drop off and pickup procedures before they show up first day. I know that has been challenging in schools that I've been at. So just you brought up what's going to happen the first day, and I would love to make sure that all schools communicate that because it's tricky sometimes. All right, thank you. Director Andrews.
So Superintendent Owens, we knew at the beginning of the school year that it was going to be a hugely challenging year. I mean, just dealing with the pandemic alone was going to be a challenge, but then all the bond work that went along with that, well, it didn't go along with the pandemic, but one of the deliverables for this school year, and then everything that went along with realigning the boundaries and converting to an additional middle school. When we looked at the plan for the year and the staff that you have to do that, it really was daunting. And I really applaud your leadership and the staff that you have and how you have really pulled off an incredible year. And it'll be wonderful to have a year where we can just work on settling in and focus on student success in this new environment. So thank you and really great job.
Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you, Director Andrews. Anyone else have questions or comments? All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Good everyone. Let me see if I can share screens. All right. Looks like we got it working. So good evening. I'm pleased to be back with you this evening to share an update on the high school sports complex strategic plan and our recommendation for moving forward. So as you may recall, we had some objectives established by this board and by our administration for completing a strategic plan review of the campus facilities at Centennial High School to support the athletics vision, community and Centennial led into the future. We had some objectives that included determining the highest and best use of the Centennial High School campus athletic facilities, considering all stakeholder groups, including coaches, student athletes, physical education classes, affiliated youth groups, school events, and community use. We also had the charge to evaluate options with an equity lens for user groups and athletic programs. We were tasked with developing a long-term vision for the campus that best meets the needs of all stakeholder groups and can be implemented in a phased approach as support and funds are available. We prepared a plan that puts Centennial athletes on par with other districts and emphasizes quality and longevity over quantity of the improvements. As you may recall, we had specific opportunities to consider with the Centennial High School campus. That was the multi-sport field at the stadium, which serves, as you'll recall, our track program, our soccer program, our football program, and physical education classes. We also knew of some seismic and some safety improvements that were needed at the stadium adjacent to that field. We knew there were opportunities for upgrades to the baseball fields and to the softball fields, as well as the varsity soccer field and additional secure bus storage in place of the lot that was sold on 174th and Bell. Through extensive engagement with stakeholder groups in the committee, we have a recommendation now for the board on a plan to move forward with the strategic plan as a whole, and then a potential phase one for you to consider. The committee is recommending that the stadium multi-sport all-weather field, which again services soccer, football, track, and physical education, be a key part of that. Bus parking that utilizes the facilities lot fully and relocates spectator and official parking north of the tennis courts, seismic and safety improvements to the stadium, a future large lighted multi-use field in the southwest corner that will support varsity soccer as well as other programs, a future turf and lighting project for the baseball and softball areas to support those programs as well as year-round use. And you may recall from some of the feedback from stakeholders groups, our baseball games go late into the evening, and without lighting, we're not able to utilize those fields as well, even with the current grass fields. And then associated storage and amenities to fully support all the programming. This is kind of what the strategic plan could look like if fully implemented. You'll observe the multi-use large field at the stadium complex with the track surrounding it. The current configuration that we have, only currently it's just a grass field that gets torn up during the winter and fall seasons. It may, if we have a wet spring like we do now, may not even be available for that season, which leaves us just with summertime and early fall for availability. It also will support varsity soccer when varsity football is not using it. As a multi-sport all-weather field, it supports physical education programming during the day as well. So multiple stakeholder groups can use that field as an all-weather multi-purpose field. And it's recommended as phase 1, along with the bus parking and the additional storage north of the tennis courts. Phase 2, you'll see in the southwest corner, is another large multi-purpose field. This would support varsity soccer, junior varsity football, junior varsity baseball, junior varsity softball, as well as potentially supporting youth leagues. We have a great facility just to the north of the district office right here that Little League uses, but they run into the same issues that we run into, but sometimes those fields are not playable, they don't have lights. And so as part of being a community initiative and considering that stakeholder group, we wanted to make sure that our strategic vision spoke to the community as well as the athletic programs within Centennial. And then phase 3 is proposed for the varsity baseball and varsity softball areas, getting turf field as well and lighting projects. So just to go over each phase individually, again, we are recommending phase 1 be the stadium multi-sport all-weather field, district-wide pupil transportation improvements, spectator and official parking north of the tennis court, and seismic and safety improvements to the stadium. That looks like this area of the strategic plan. Phase 2 would be the large multi-use all-weather field in the southwest corner of the campus, again, supporting varsity soccer, JV baseball and softball, JV football. We would add additional complex-wide storage. Right now, you may or may not be aware that we have a series of tough sheds, we have a series of Connex, we have storage in the high school, and it's kind of mismanaged and kind of all over the place, doing the best with what folks had available at the time that those things were purchased and installed. So having complex wide storage will allow us to use those facilities where those storage containers are currently, as well as provide equitable and consistent access for all athletic programs. Improve spectator seating and bleachers to the new all-weather field in the southwest corner that's being proposed in phase 2. We have some fantastic sports teams that are out there, and there's no bleacher seating. There's no covered seating in the fall for soccer games. You know, there's just not good amenities for the families and the community members that want to support our student athletes and our other programs. And then we are additionally proposing some additional stadium improvements in phase 2 and improved concessions. Again, this will be area for phase 2. This is proposed as the recommended area for phase 2 that we're talking about. In phase 3, we recommend replacement of the baseball and softball grass fields with all-weather artificial turf fields, add covered batting cages, improve spectator seating and bleachers, and improve concessions. And these are the 2 fields that we're talking about. Sounds like a great plan, and it has universal support, but it does come at a price and an investment in our student athletes program, our physical education programming, our support for students and support for the community. And this is what that looks like. For the stadium multi-sport all-weather field, again, supporting soccer, football, track events, physical education classes, the price tag is estimated at $1.99 million. And that is for the removal of the grass field, degrading the fill and other site work, improved fill for impact absorption and longevity of the field, and installation of turf, goals, and field events for track. Importantly, it does not include the actual track. It's the field events within the turf area of the track for this estimate. Phase 1 transportation improvements will include district-wide pupil transportation improvements, including additional paving, secured enclosed fencing, and restriping of the facilities lot behind the stadium. It includes the relocation of spectator and official parking to the north side of the tennis courts and a sidewalk for safety along Rosie Way. For anybody who's ever enjoyed a football game or other event in the stadium, you may recall we have a road that goes down from the parking area to the west of the high school campus, the northwest center area, down to the stadium. And it's a narrow asphalt paved road with some speed bumps. For safety, and we're looking at that holistically, we're proposing that we're putting in a sidewalk for pedestrians when we're putting in parking on the north sidewalk there, complete with ramps and wide enough for accessibility. This comes in at a price tag of $475,000. It is important to recall, though, that as part of these transportation improvements come because we did sell the surplus auxiliary bus lot for just over $2 million. So this is a relatively inexpensive price tag for meeting all the needs of the transportation needs of the district based on what we had available. And last but not least, for phase 1, we're proposing stadium improvements to include seismic bracing to reduce the risk of roof collapse during a seismic event, upgrading safety guardrails to current code, and replacing joint material to prevent further water intrusion to protect the structure. And that comes in at $715,000. We do have an opportunity to buy up on that seismic and safety improvements to include additional seismic upgrades to the back wall, upgrading public restrooms that the spectators and others use when they come to our events, and upgrading the team rooms for athletic teams when they meet during halftime, when they meet during physical education classes, when they meet during practices, when they meet, pre and post game. And those come in at the estimates as listed here, $360,000, $140,000, and $220,000 respectively. So the grand total for phase 1 is estimated to be $3.18 million. It's important to note that's an all-in cost. So that includes direct construction costs, that includes design, engineering, permitting, drainage, earthworks, construction management, everything going into those estimates, $3.18 million. The board reserve fund balance as of July 30th, 2022 is estimated to be 9.6 million. Is at 9.3 million currently, but as you may recall, we have an offer on the Marie Street home, which should close by the end of the week. And so that will raise the board reserve fund balance to 9.6 million. It's estimated that if the board approves moving forward with this project, the board reserve balance will be 6.42 million. You may recall that before the board had expressed interest in instructions to target $7 million as the balance for the board reserve count. So if we move forward with this investment, we are very close to still having that $7 million number in the board reserve fund. And we have additional interest expected from the income in that fund, or from the money in that fund, estimated it to be roughly $100,000 a year. And you may recall the board approved utilizing some of the funds for projectors and is repaying that fund over the next 5 years. So all told, you can expect around $175,000 worth of additional revenue coming into that fund. So it would be back at $7 million in 3 years, pending any other action by the. Some additional considerations for the phase 1 plan is the Centennial High School track. As noted, the estimate includes the field events within the track, but it does not include resurfacing the track. Resurfacing the track is a potential issue to consider. The track was last resurfaced in 2007. It's 15 years old. The estimated lifespan of the track is 10 to 12 years with regular maintenance. So we've more than exceeded the estimated lifespan for the track, and it is showing signs of that age and of that wear. Centennial Middle School and all of our tracks were recently replaced as part of the 2020 bond project. And construction activity during an old weather field installation may cause damage, minor as it may be, but still may cause damage. As you can imagine, all the earthworks of our 24-inch to 30-inch mound has to be taken out. All the fill has to be taken in, all the construction vehicles. They will protect the track to the best of their abilities, but there may be some minor damage by proceeding with the old weather field. Resurfacing the track in conjunction with the phase 1 non-bond sports complex projects does make sense financially and from a schedule wise. You may understand clearly that there's impacts to our fields and to our programs while we're completing this work. The athletics coach and the athletics community has advised they would like the work to start no earlier than the end of track season, near the end of May, or early June. So that puts us at finishing sometime around December, potentially, with a 6-month construction project. If we were then to add on a track project afterwards, that would be additional potential downtime for a program or coming back later. That would have additional mobilization costs of getting a contractor on site and doing that work. And that would have potential impacts to programming. Resurfacing the high school track would result in having equal quality tracks at both the middle school level and the high school program, which would be helpful for athletic programs and athletes that continue on from our 7th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade onto 9th grade track programs. You will recall that track is one of the programs we've had at the middle school consistently. And so we do have many student athletes at the middle school level that wanted to continue on to the high school level. So having facilities that support that, is a good idea. Adding the CHS track as a potential bond project would require the bond oversight committee support as well as this board support. So that is not being recommended tonight. It is just an additional consideration that I want the board to be aware of and not be surprised later. And that would come at a cost of $600,000 approximately. We have a really good estimate on that because we did that as part of the strategic plan. And as noted, we just upgraded the tracks at Centennial Middle School and Oliver. So we're very familiar with the timeline for the projects and the cost for those projects and confident that they can be done and at that price. The next steps for the board is to consider moving forward with the opportunity for the phase 1 non-bond projects later this evening. There's 3 items before you, the 3 items that we discussed in old business, and that is the multi-sport all-weather field, as well as the district-wide bus facility improvements and the seismic and safety upgrades to the stadium. If it's approved, the administration will work with the board to implement. And we also work with the bond oversight committee and the board to consider the addition of the resurfacing of the Centennial High School track as an approved bond project, if that's the will of the bond oversight committee and the board. Again, there's no action requested tonight. Additional next steps would be to receive a fee proposal from Robertson Engineering to plan out the phase 1 work, to complete the construction documents, the engineering, the final designs, continue stakeholder engagement, really refine phase 1, and then prepare documents for bid. The administration would return to the board at a future meeting with recommendations for awarding the fee proposal and the construction bid awards after those have gone out for public competition and competitive procurement. And with that, it's a lot of information, a lot of exciting possibilities. I welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you so much. We'll open it up to questions and comments at this point. Yes, Director Harden.
This is very exciting. It's been a long time coming. Thank you for moving this forward and presenting it to us. Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you very much. In regards to the track, it seems, replacing the field and replacing the stand and like fixing the stands and making the seismic upgrades and the parking, kind of changing that whole area seems silly to not replace a track that is outdated. So I would propose that we include that or approach the bond oversight committee or go through the process of moving along with that as well. That would be great. In my mind, I would love to include phase 2, but I'll take phase 1 and the track.
Great comments. Thank you, Director Harden. And as has been our practice of no surprises with the Bond Oversight Committee, we did preview the track as a possibility with the committee at our last meeting, which was Monday the 13th. There was largely support for including it as a potential bond project because we did the tracks at Oliver and we did the tracks at Centennial Middle School. And of course, there was the feedback we've received before that the other items in phase 1 are out of scope of the bond and are supported to be board reserve account or other funding. And while I say there was broad support, I would say Director Andrews, 75%, maybe 3/4 for the items. There was also recognition that more work could be done because this was the first that they were hearing about it. So we are committed to continue engaging with them and making sure there's not any surprises. There's no action on that tonight to make sure that we continue our partnership with our community public body oversight for the bond.
Could I just on this, I'm going to have other questions, but on this topic, I think the thing that you were going to get back to the Bond Oversight Committee about was how destroyed is the track going to be after the turf field gets put in? I mean, that's really the question. I mean, is it going to even be usable after that? And we need to know that. I mean, is there a way that they could put in the turf field and not destroy the track? I agree that the whole thing should happen, but I think that was like the kind of the remaining issue. Maybe you had other things you were going to follow up on as well, but anyway.
No, it's a great question. And that's, we reached out to our partners at Robertson Engineering and Benyon, who puts in the tracks, and to find the age of the track, the expected life remaining. And I do owe a follow-up to the Bond Oversight Committee with the documentation and the findings that they had. The short answer to your question is, would the track be usable at the end of an all-weather field project? The short answer is yes, but it would, have diminished life as well. So it might be likened to a car that's kind of on its last leg and we just took a road trip across the country. It might get us there. I don't know it's going much further. It really is, at 15 years old, the district had received a great value for that track because we've now exceeded its recommended useful life by 20% already. This project would start in June of next year and be finished in December of next year. So that's an extra 18 months on top of the 15 years. So it would be 16 and a half years, all at the end of any stadium improvement projects. And so while it still might be safe to run on, it will show signs of cracks and wear and diminished surface and bubbling and all delamination and all those things that happen to our Centennial Middle School and our Oliver tracks.
Thank you. Director Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say I support what Director Arden was saying. And I think there's just so many reasons that pile up, not only the opportunity to do it now, the risk of it being damaged and us having to do it anyway, but really the equity to the sports, making sure that those families have an opportunity to have top-notch facilities. And then when we realize things are past their lifespan, that just increases the likelihood in my mind of injuries. And those, we should do better by those students and make sure that they're not, subject to any injuries or anything because we let facilities go too long. So I'm definitely in support of getting that track on.
Thank you, Director Lynn. Director Shields, Director Andrews, please.
Okay, well, either one of us. Okay, so the seismic upgrades at the stadium do not include the restroom upgrades or the team room upgrades. That would be an extra, what was that, about $500,000 or so? Or no, I think it was more than that, 6 or yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you're not recommending that at this time?
They are opportunities for the board to consider. It is the board reserve fund, so it is completely at your discretion. We do recommend that they be addressed at some point in the future, whether it's a phase 1 or a phase 2 is really kind of more of the decision point, I think.
Mhm.
You know, the plan is kind of before us, and how soon all 3 phases get implemented, you know, is a source of utilizing those board reserve funds or other funds. And so it really comes down to,
But at this point, we don't have any obvious financing opportunities for those phase 2 and phase 3, do we? Apart from drawing down the board reserve fund, that is not something that we can replenish very well.
correct, that's an accurate statement.
I guess though we could consider using the bond contingency, but these are all things that the community didn't want us to use bond money for. So it seems like it has to be some other source of money or a future bond. If we're going to be doing that in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe that's adequate timing for the rest of the phases.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I'm very much encouraged by this phase 1 plan for our student athlete community, as well as our students who are in physical education classes, our community members, our youth league programs. And there potentially is an opportunity where successfully completed bond projects, not these, but other bond projects, the community rallies and supports us in doing that important and great work. And then now this is done for another segment of our community, a broad segment, because again, it's supporting students, it's supporting youth leagues, it's supporting athletics and student athletes. There is an opportunity for, you know, folks to get together and consider fundraising activities, an additional bond. There could be sponsorship opportunities. You know, I think there's wonderful opportunities. We're happy to explore each and every one of them fully. But there is not an identifiable, oh, you know, we said if this property sells, it would fund this, right? Like
Right.
there is for this phase 1 kind of
Right.
aspect.
And so may I keep going? All right. So you had said that, and you've posed it this way, we have 3 different votes on these facilities. It's not just one. So you've teased it out so that we can make a decision on each of these 3 components of phase 1, not including the track. Is there a penalty for only approving one thing, like the all-weather field only? Would the costs for the other components be greater in the future or different from what you've got right now as estimates?
That's an excellent question. The costs for the aspects that you would potentially approve are just that. Those would be the costs for those aspects of the plan, and they're not dependent upon the other aspects. We've made the fully loaded estimate, right? So all the soft costs, all the engineering, all the permitting independently for each one. And it was specifically done that way to give the, you know, make sure the board had the authority and had the agency to support what they wanted, what you want to support. There is opportunity cost. So if we do this, we can't do something else. And there is inflation. We've seen what's going on in the market, but we don't know what's going to go on in the market in the future. But generally speaking, you know, if you look historically, you're looking at about a 5 to 7% increase in cost each year that you delay, or, you know, each year that passes between the current estimate and doing the work in the future, with the potential for it to be higher or lower. It's an estimate, right? So does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Your question about, you know, timing in terms of use of money, right? And our need to approve the allocation. I get the things that we have already proposed. I get the transportation and I get the field, right? That's not a question of mine. The phase 2 and the phase 3, I don't have really any question that we need them, right? But the funding of those things is, I think what I'd like to hear is a little bit more from the BOC, the bond oversight, because frankly, when we wrote that bond, we wrote it in a broad sense as well, right? Safety, security. Well, seismic improvements to me are safety and security. So, you know, maybe the public wasn't quite aware, excuse me, of what their needs were. Neither were we until you open up some of these buildings and open up some of these facilities and you look underneath the hood of the car and you find out, oh crap, there's other things that need to be done. And I really think that if we have that, I'd like to have that conversation with the BOC, especially when we get down to the point that we may have contingencies, you know, we have monies that are left over. Now, if we don't, I mean, we talked about the above the line, everything has been identified above the line. But we're identifying something now that we're doing with a different fund. And yet, is it still within the purview, if you will, of the bond? Because it is going to provide those types of things that we talked to our community about extensively. Safety and security being one of those, curriculum being another. And I think that's one of the things that we need to continue to discuss. Sports complex always implies, well, it's just those, you know, kids that play sports. Well, that's not true in this particular instance. We're recognizing the need of the whole, right? The curriculum as a whole. And when you bring up what's happening with our middle schools, especially when it relates to the track and field situation, our track in particular. And we have these more, if you will, modern facilities there, and then they come to a crap track, right? That doesn't make any sense to do it that way. So if we have the opportunity over these next, you know, few months to try to look at that, massage that a little bit, have more extensive discussions. And I know Director Andrews, you're with the BOC, and so you have that opportunity to really, you know, dig in with the BOC about this. If there are going to be contingency funds that are there to be used. Now, if it's all going to be used,
Yeah, I don't
that's-
want to rain on your parade, but we've got 3 additional items on the agenda tonight that are use of contingency funds. So
Right.
we're already starting to use the contingency funds, right? I mean, I don't think any of those are coming from savings in other projects.
Correct.
And those are all supported by the BOC for sure, for sure. So
but like and is it okay that we have a dialogue back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay. Like what we did with the pool. Suddenly something came up about the pool, and what are we going to do about, you know, the tiling, lining, whatever we
Sure.
should, the words what I'm supposed to looking for.
Yeah.
That came up and we had to look at it as how does that relate to what we're trying to do with the whole facility? And I think that we're at that juncture probably with BOC, right? Because it's going to come down, it's going to be a finite amount, you know, money, and how do we want to see those used to make sure that we are maximizing the bang for the buck? And that's something we've talked about a great deal with BOC and this board in particular. So that would be my first thing. I just like to, you know, and maybe this is something where the board has to meet with the BOC as a whole and have that discussion in front of them. Because that's something that I think I'd like to see. And then I have one other comment, but if we want to keep on this topic, I could come back.
Yeah, this is a little bit related, but one thing to remember about bond funds is a certain percentage, I believe it's 85%, has to be used within a certain period of time. So if the timeline of the projects going on at the stadium go down the road too far, we're unable to use bond funds for it, because it will be past the timeline.
So that's the 85%, but what happens with 15%, right? I mean, those are the kinds of things this is that timeline kind of thing that you have to work, those really incredibly scary graphs that we saw at the very beginning of all of this. We're like, how do they manage all of that? That's what we're paying for to a degree. But we're at that point where we're going to have those conversations. And I think maybe a meeting with us all, so we could hear what the BOC's concerns are as well. I know Claudia has been doing a really good job of communicating that with, but I don't know that they're hearing what we're looking at in terms of the vision for the entire district. So that was one of the things. The second thing I wanted to know is the plans that you're presenting are impressive, right? It looks like, oh my gosh, we're actually getting into the world of how other people look. To me, this is almost a roadshow. when we finally make the decisions. And the roadshow should include, you know, how we have maximized bond money, board reserve funds, things of that nature that relates to bringing the community together. And when I talk about a roadshow, I'm not talking about just our schools. This should be presented, if we could get on an agenda, at the city of Gresham. Because frankly, they're being pressed with their Parks and Recreation group. We had, I think at Superintendent Owen's invitation of the Parks and Rec guy from Gresham at our athletics, Ideal Athletics meetings. And he was very interested in what we were doing and how we were doing it. So looking at some of those kind of partnerships, I just happened to be out in Sherwood looking at what they're doing with Snyder Park and the things they're doing with their school district. It's like amazing and pretty because it's making it a park facility as well as a facility for sports for everyone, not just the kids in our district, but in our community as a whole, in the Gresham community. I guess I am looking more east than I'm looking west because that's kind of how we've been identified. So I'd really like, when we finally figured out what the heck we're doing, right, and we've approved it, then taking this out to others just outside of our own district and for sure to Gresham. Let's talk about the things that you were mentioning, which is how can we bring others to the table? What monies could they provide? What kind of extension of use could we do without overtaxing your staff to be able to do it all? So, thank you.
You bring up several great points, Director Shields. If I could speak to the first one, it might be helpful in regards to the safety and the seismic upgrades. I think we're on solid ground with the safety improvements at the stadium. If the bond oversight committee supports them, and we want to talk about the railing and the water intrusion and things like that, because we've done that with the bond and the language really supports that. We haven't done seismic improvement with the bond, and I'm not sure that seismic would fall into that kind of catch-all. So I do have some hesitancy with that, but you know, I think we need to review it with the committee and look at the ballot language as well. But there is an opportunity to kind of thread the needle, if you will, and seismic falls into the, you know, the board reserve account, and the railing and the water intrusion may be paid for, may be added as scope for bond projects, or maybe part of the much smaller, but the capital improvement fund that the district has that this body approved at the last meeting as part of the budget. That might be something that they're able to pick up as part of our capital improvement fund of $100,000 or something like that. We have, as part of the budget, you know, we have a placeholder for unforeseen events in schools and unforeseen projects. So it's not marked or set aside for any specific project at this point in time. So there may be an opportunity, if the board wishes, and to consider, you know, seismic might be a board reserve account, and the other two may or may not be you know, a bond project, or maybe a facilities project.
Thank you. Are you suggesting that we are on potentially shaky ground with the seismic project?
That wouldn't be my,
Sorry,
all right.
I couldn't help it. I apologize.
Yeah.
Other questions and comments?
Just wanted to point out to Director Shields' comment that we have a meeting set up with Joe Walsh from the city of Gresham, Director Southerton and I do next week on exactly the topic that you're talking about. So
Very
good timing. Yep.
And I see Director Lynn has his hand raised.
Great. Go ahead, Director Lynn.
Oh, yeah, sure. Just to add on, I hope, you know, we had these conversations recently about Park Lane Park. It was exactly what Director Shields was talking about. They had a park project right next to our new Oliver Middle School, which would have included a all-weather lit field that could be a great boon to that area. And yet recent cuts have eliminated that. So I hope that we can have those conversations and partnerships with all our schools, even the ones in Portland too, and leverage those partnerships somehow to get those fields for our kids.
Thank you. Director Andrews.
I'm sorry.
Don't
So
apologize.
did you, I want to be prepared for our votes tonight. Did you say that do you think there is some opportunity to reimburse the board reserve account with bond funds if we decide to tease out, say, the size or the safety aspects of those? If we, at some point in the future, the BOC says, yeah, that probably aligns. I don't think that's going to happen because we keep probing and probing and probing on this topic. But just in case, is there a way to reimburse that? Or once we've committed the board reserve account, we're down that path and there's no going back?
I would use different terminology, financially speaking, and just compliance with the bond language and Oregon budget law and whatnot. But essentially, you would be approving a project tonight. And it would be potentially approving a project tonight. And with the clause that says, should the bond oversight committee and the board determine X part of this project to be supported with other funds, expenses at that time and forward will be paid with that account. Does that make sense? We can't necessarily transfer bond proceeds, which are already in possession by the district, into the board reserve account, but
So, okay, so that's a distinction because you've said that we will not start construction for 12 months, right?
exactly.
So we have
Yeah.
12 months to work that out.
Yeah,
So I think when we get to the approval of those particular topic or those particular items, maybe we'll want to include some language about being able to put the actually fund some of the particular aspects of it with bond contingency money or something like that.
and I can work on a friendly amendment in between now and then if the board wishes, which, identifies the board reserve account as the primary source of funding. That would be the backstop should nothing change, but may identify an alternative source of funding in the future. I will say that we have to be able to go forward with our engineering partners, with our construction bidders in good faith that we would have a backstop should other funding not be available.
Great. Any other questions or comments on that? Director Shields.
Along those same lines, the amendment in helping us with crafting, that would be extremely helpful because we can't see that far in the future with what's going on. So I appreciate that. As it relates to, I've already said my piece about we need a policy about how this additional monies, we're looking to commit this to the sports complex in a variety of ways. Fine. That means that there will be money, left over. We need a policy to help guide the board in future, but we also need and I know I'm hammering you on this, so I'm sorry, but the fund to replenish all of these things, like you said, we've got a track that's 15 years old and it shouldn't be, and we should have replaced it probably along a schedule, and we don't have the money for it because we don't put it away.
Yeah.
The board reserve fund can be a part of that process because, as you also mentioned, we're gaining approximately 100K plus whatever. That could be set aside just on the interest alone if the board reserve fund was maintained. But those are the kinds of things that I just need help with. Us making that commitment. I know it's outside of the budget cycle. We've already approved the budget, but we need to have a plan in place for when we get started, that the district doesn't find themselves with facilities that need improvements and there's no money because we didn't think to set it aside. I've heard it too many times at too many districts. I don't want to be that district. So however you can help us,
Sure.
Make those decisions between now and our start of that project, I would really appreciate it.
Great comment and Director Shields, and we have started that work. So you may recall from the budget that was recently adopted at the last minute, you all created the athletic facilities fund, the separate revenue fund that will be funded by all the gate fees, admission fees, and fees that are associated with activity around co-curricular activities around athletics, and whether that be rental of an all-weather turf field to unaffiliated groups who want to rent the fields to do their practices and games, or, minor maintenance fees for maintaining the field to affiliated youth leagues or whatever may happen. All those fees are now going into a separate dedicated account for the facilities. And then the budget committee, as well as this board, approved the adoption of transferring $200,000 into our capital fund for everything else in the district, $200,000 above the construction excise tax revenue that already goes into that fund each year for the facility needs of the district. Is it enough? No, our average building is 55 years old. We are exceptionally grateful to our community for passing the bond, but it was 65 million and we needed 140. So there are other needs. So is it enough? No, but it's a start. We've started the work after X amount of years. We've now begun the work and we can continue to do that work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you so much, Director Southerton.
Thank you.
Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 7:58. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for bringing it back. We're back to order at 7:58. Yeah, extra gavel, right? Next up, we have confirmation items. We'll be confirming these en masse. Can I ask for a motion?
Motion to approve confirmation line as listed with the additions.
Great.
Someone has a list.
Yep.
Second.
Great. It is moved and seconded that we confirm the items as listed with the additions. Are we ready for a vote?
I have one
Oh, great.
comment,
Please.
semantic, just procedural, 6.5.2 and 6.5.3 both contain the same person. Mr. Miller from the high school. I don't know if the resignation admin is supposed to be someone else.
Yeah. It's supposed to be.
Joanna?
Joanna.
Yeah, that's how it shows in my notes.
So I see 6.5.1 is Joanna. And 6.5.2 says resignation admin, but that is a licensed teacher. So I don't know if we need to remove that or if there's someone that's missing or it needs to be corrected.
Great catch.
Let me take a quick look.
As corrected. All right, it's moved and seconded. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Aye. David, are you back with us? All right, we'll mark that as an abstention. The ayes have it. The motion to confirm these items has been adopted. Moving on, our next item for business is old business. First up, 1.7.1.1 is our good old friend, Director Southerton. Come on down. Just flew in and boy, are my arms tired.
All right, good to be back with you again. So up for consideration before the board is the Centennial High School multi-sport turf field project using board reserve funds from the sale of surplus property. The administration is recommending the approval of a Centennial High School multi-sport turf field project. As you may recall, the current condition of the stadium grass field at Centennial High School is poor. The field requires extensive maintenance, has severe crowning, which is at or exceeds OSAA regulation limits, and has drainage issues that need to be addressed. Centennial High School is also one of the only high schools in the region without an all-weather multi-sport field. Additionally, the field experiences extensive wear throughout the football and soccer season, and it is a disadvantage for our student athletes who compete on turf fields against opponents at away competitions. But they practice on grass fields at home. The grass field can also not be used by physical education or gym classes and other programs frequently as frequently as needed due to wear and tear on the field. This project will address the deficiencies of the varsity athletic field, support physical education programming, result in lower operating costs for the district, and support multiple Centennial athletic programs, youth programs, and community use. The administration has received a total project estimate at a cost of $1.99 million, and the administration recommends the Board of Directors approves the creation of a Centennial High School multi-sport turf field project to be funded from the Board Reserve Fund in the amount of $1,999,000.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to call for a motion.
Motion to approve, motion to approve the high school multi-sport turf field project at $1.9 million.
Second.
Second.
Great. It is moved and seconded that we approve the CMHS multi-sport turf field project.
Chair, can you tell me who moved and seconded? Who made the motion?
Vice Chair Fuller made the motion and Director Hardin seconded.
Thank you.
Mhm. At this point, would like to open it up for debate. If there's questions.
Were we gonna add something to the motion that allowed the possible funding from a different source before the project was initiated?
I'm happy to offer a friendly amendment. I understood that to be for the stadium resolution.
The safety and the
Okay, so
seismic.
we wouldn't even try to do anything safety related on the turf field?
No,
Okay,
I don't think, I think
Fine.
that's,
It's a valid question. Is there anything that you see in that project that would fit underneath bond and bond contingency money? It would have to take discussion, obviously with POC.
There are no aspects that I'm aware of in that project that would meet the language.
okay.
are there any, you want to go around the room and just see how people are, do a check-in before we vote? Or are we ready? Do we feel like we're ready for a vote?
Let's vote.
Let's go ahead and take it for a vote. All right. Those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Awesome. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We will have approved the CHS multi-sport turf field project as submitted. You're on a roll. Take it.
Excellent. And I am going to share my screen if that's helpful, because this is the resolution that we have potential friendly amendment. Excellent. And looks like we're up. So this is for considering approval of the Centennial High School Stadium Seismic Improvement Project using board reserve funds from the sale of surplus property. The administration is recommending the approval of a Centennial High School Stadium Improvement Project. As you may recall, Centennial High School Stadium is in poor repair. Current stadium was built more than 60 years ago and has received little to no improvements, seismic or otherwise, during this time, and has been experiencing water intrusion issues. The project would add seismic bracing to reduce the risk of roof collapse during a seismic event, as well as bring safety guardrails up to current code and replace joint material to prevent further water intrusion. The administration has received estimates for the cost of this project to be $715,000 for the base scope as noted above. There are opportunities to complete additional building improvements if identified and supported by the board. They are as follow: the stadium back wall upgrade, which is identified as a seismic tier 1B opportunity. 1A was the roof bracing noted above. 1B would be the back concrete wall. That's estimated to be $360,000. Stadium upgrades to public restrooms would be $140,000, and stadium upgrades to the team rooms are estimated to be $220,000. The administration recommends the Board of Directors approves the creation of the Centennial High School Stadium Improvement Project to be funded using board reserve funds, and this is the friendly amendment, or other funds identified by the board if available at a later date. Clearly, I was sharing my screen and typed screen. Thank you. From the sale of surplus property in the amount of $715,000 and provide additional funding for added improvements from the list above if supported. Thank you.
I move that the administration recommends the Board of Directors approves the creation of Centennial High School Stadium Improvement Project to be funded using board reserves or other funds identified by the board if available at a later date. From the sale of surplus property in the amount of $715,000 and provide additional funding for added improvements. No. From the above list of desired items by the board.
Thank you, Director Andrews, bearing with me there.
Second.
Excellent. It has been moved and seconded that the administration or that we approve the creation of the Centennial High School Stadium Improvement Project. And all that, like, to be funded with all of the things. Yes, as stated. Are there any questions or comments at this time? I think that, oh yes, Director Shields.
We've been getting money for seismic improvements to buildings. Are there such things as seismic improvements for stadiums?
It's an excellent question, and currently there is not, because it's not considered an occupied space, because it's not occupied the majority of the time. Should the board identify, upgrading the team rooms and make those classrooms where physical education classes could be taught, then it would be an occupied space and then maybe eligible for potential seismic grant in the future. But that would have to be something that would be done with our director of curriculum and student learning and the administrators, the principal at the high school, and obviously the PE department to see if, holding classes out there makes sense should those renovations be done.
Can I follow?
Yes, please.
So at this point in time, and that was a question I was wondering about in terms of the team rooms. You had mentioned that potentially our physical education classes might be utilizing some of that facility. That puts it under our curriculum umbrella, and as a curriculum space, then that of course gets it underneath potentially under our BOC. Potentially, I'm just looking for, space.
Sure.
And money. But that, as I understood, that would also take greater conversations with people who would be utilizing that space. It's not just a place for people to run in from the rain or at halftime.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would take, additional stakeholder engagement. And there's certainly support from the athletics and co-curricular community. We did have representation from the physical education department on this strategic plan, but it was not identified as a potential to use for classrooms. It just wasn't surfaced as a potential conversation. So there would be work to be done there.
And would you believe that the way the motion is worded this time, that exploration would be allowed?
I do, given the added friendly amendment of other funds identified the board, if available at a later date. You can always add as this is whatever gets approved tonight, maybe something else gets added to it next month or next year, right? So there's always that opportunity to come back later. We can also bid these items out as alternates when we go to bid out the core projects that were approved this evening. We can design and build these as alternates, and should the economy change and there be more construction folks available to do work and bids come in at a lower price, we may have the opportunity to buy up with the existing authorization that you all are approving, or we may, just have an opportunity to come back and go to the board and to the bond oversight committee, are you sure you don't want this? Or whatever it may be. So it's not that it's off the table, it just means that it wouldn't necessarily proceed with the same level on support as the other projects noted.
All right, Director Harden, do you have any questions? Director Andrews? Director Lynn, do you have any questions? Vice Chair Fuller? Question, if we approve this, are we actually approving these 3 additional items as well, or will we be, how will that work?
That's a great question, Chair Slawski. No, because you have not identified as moving forward with those 3 additional items, nor identified additional funding. The $715,000 was just for the base scope. If you wanted to move forward with the team rooms, for example, then we would offer the friendly amendment of adding the team rooms as the scope and adding additional $220,000.
I'd like to go around the room and just see what people think of adding that in at this point in time. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Director Lynn. Can you let us know what you think of that?
Sure. Yeah, I think we should go forward with the improvements and not hold anything up. I know that this is going to be a long timeline anyway, so the more that we could just get started and get authorized to begin with. And top team rooms is good. Need it.
Great. Thank you. Director Harden.
I agree with that. I think we should move forward with the upgrades, especially since the wording of the motion has flexibility of potential fund, other funds.
Thank you. Director Andrews.
No, I don't think we should draw the board reserve fund down any further than the 6.4 million that Director Southerton has advised. That would bring it, if we did all 3 of those, it would bring it below $6 million. So I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think 7 million is a good target, and I think 6.4 million is low, but I'm willing to go there for now, but not lower than that.
Thank you. Director Shields.
I would agree with Director Andrews at this point in time. Not that I'm against any of these. I think they're well deserved and probably need to be done. But I think we have to get much further down the road to be able to identify where that money would come from and the impact it would have on the bottom line in terms of the reserve fund. And so at this moment, no, but reserving to continue to look at it and find out additional resources. Yeah, because I support the concept for sure. The source of money, I want it more identified, and the impact from the reserve fund first.
Vice Chair Fuller.
Let's see. Though you both bring up very good points, and so I really do want to acknowledge that too. I think that after talking with some of the high school staff when I went to go visit last week, I think it would be, especially since it has the language in there that has that flexibility, like you were saying, Director Harden, I feel like it's good to go ahead and continue. It doesn't mean we stop not looking for other avenues of funding as well too. I know that when after talking with them, a lot of the things that they had a lot of the things and students have been complaining has been about how at this time it doesn't look like we really are taking care of the things that we have, the buildings and even though we are of course working on it and upgrading it and stuff like that, but the athletic department it's been a long time coming for them, and I want to make sure that they're proud to be athletes there. And so I would say that as long as we continue to be transparent, talk about more funding, I don't have a problem with it going forward. So that's my 2 cents.
Great. I believe that we should I'm working on the fire. Make an amendment to the original motion to include those 3 items. Please.
So you're saying you would do from 715, we add another $700,000 to it, so now we would be at 1 million something. Do the math for me, because honestly, I don't want to try to do.
Yeah.
The total would be $1,435,000.
For both.
Correct.
Motion is to approve 1 million. What was it?
$435,000.
$1,435,000 commitment from from board reserve funds. And or other sources that committing the board to. 1.4.
Yeah, and I think that with the notion of other sources as potentials, I think that there's time to work that out.
Oh, well, the BOC is not in support of using the bond fund for that. So did you have other sources in mind?
I think, well, I thought that was part of the, but they were open for the safety or open for having some of that
No,
conversation.
not yet. That conversation has not occurred.
Okay,
I don't think, has it?
Great questions, and it has not occurred for these 3 specific items.
okay,
We have discussed safety improvements, we have discussed structural improvements, we've just discussed classroom improvements, etc. So it would be new to the bond oversight committee for
Okay.
these 3 specific items.
Director Shields.
That's where I object. We've got the $715,000, which we were saying that we would look for additional funding, maybe under, whatever would qualify under BOC. That would make sense to use the monies to ask. Because there's a whole list on below the line that contingency funds can be used for. But if we were to approve an amendment to the motion for 1.4 million, we're saying that if those other funds don't become, my concern is that if the other funds don't become available, then we've just committed the board reserve fund for 1.4 instead of the 715. And I'm not in agreement at this moment in time to do that. I have no problem approving the 715 and looking for other things and then having those discussions, but I'm not ready to commit $1.4 million from the board reserve fund because the other things don't come.
So do we have is anyone willing to put forward a motion to make the amendment? And we can vote on it, to make the amendment to add those 3 items.
Yes, I'd be willing to make the motion.
Director Lynn made I'm guessing that's what that was, sorry.
Yes,
Can you repeat yourself, Director Lynn?
yes, I would make the motion to add those 3 for the total of the 1.4 million as amended. So is there other language needed?
Nope. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Excellent. It's moved and seconded that we make an amendment to the motion to include those 3 additional items. Are we ready to call a vote? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please note that is Director Lynn, Director Hardin, Vice Chair Fuller, and Chair Solowski. All those opposed? All right, please note that is Director Shields and Director Andrews. The ayes have it. We will be including those 3 items in the vote. All right. Please.
It's an oversight on my part. I did notice that the board note has the 17th. I didn't catch that when I uploaded it. There are a couple of other board notes. I just want to make you aware of it. It is the 22nd. I apologize for the oversight. That should be noted.
Thank you.
And I can modify it later so that it looks correct.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion in front of us. We all had chances. Is there anyone who else would like a chance to speak on the motion before we take a vote? We took a vote to amend it. We didn't actually vote on it, yes or not. Yes,
Yes, and I have a question.
please.
In the motion, I would like it to reflect 1.1. Say that.
1.14. 1.435. I didn't write it down. Thank you.
Does this accurately capture what the amendment was requested and asked for? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, is there any comments or things people would like to say at this point that have not already been said?
Yeah, I'm just,
Director Anders?
thank you for calling on me. I find it very disingenuous with regard to the Bond Oversight Committee. I believe that there could be, well, it just is very disingenuous with regard to them and is not paying attention to their input.
I hear that. I would also like to say that none of this is directed towards the Bond Oversight Committee. It's directed towards our students who deserve, and our community that deserves these facilities. And that's where I'm coming from. Director Shields?
I don't know that we've had an opportunity to look at the entirety of the below the line list that has been identified. As new board members, I don't know that you were involved in the bond or the list of things from the strat planning that was done so that you could see the impact, but committing $700,000 more to one thing specific when we have already committed millions of dollars to the sports complex is troubling to me because you're right. It does have an impact on students, but we have things that are under the line in the BOC. And that's why we have a BOC to have those conversations with. And when I was talking about alternative funding, I was actually talking about the alternative funding as it related to the $715,000. Moving to $1.4 million plus commits and moves our reserve fund down below what our policy is established at 7 million. So what you're saying is you're going against the policy as well. And I'm very troubled by that. And that's a historical statement. It's something that some of us have gone through. And we were just talking about the break. We've also gone through the situation where, you know, we were within hours of not even being able to make payroll. And now we're talking about saying, well, let's just go for it. Let's just add another $720,000 to $715,000 that's already identified. I'm just not ready to do that. And I'll be voting against the amended motion because of that. I think that we have to have an understanding of the entirety, which is what I was asking for in terms of having a meeting with the BOC. So I can also be reminded about the strategic plan and what the approval process was that we used when we established the bond, so that if I felt that this, amongst all of the other things that are on the list, was raised to a level that I wanted to support it, then I could support it at a later time. But I'm not just willing to say, well, you know, we've got money there and now we're going to go below our mark. And we are talking about, you know, projects that we haven't reviewed with BOC. I'm very uncomfortable with that because as I understand it, nothing below on these bulleted items would fit in a BOC environment. So now you're committing funds that goes against our policy anyway. We won't be able to maintain the 7 million, which is a policy that we already have. So voting against the policy means that's a real challenge for me as well, because that was established. Hard fought to establish it, hard fought to be able to get to that point. So provide stability to the district. And I think that this is not a way to spend monies and our resources when we don't exactly know what else is coming down the line. So anyway, I'll be voting no against the amended motion.
Thank you, Director Shields. I have a question for you, Director Southerton. If part of what you had said was that if we did one of the items for the team rooms, could that potentially open us up for grant money for some of the other 715 originally, or any of that, making them usable class space?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I'll share is what my understanding of the seismic improvement program is through the state of Oregon, and my belief that if they became occupied spaces, for whatever reason, we taught classes in there for PE or otherwise they were occupied for the duration of the day, then I believe they would qualify for application for seismic improvement funds. Doesn't necessarily mean that we would be awarded seismic improvement funds. We applied for Powell Butte and for Oliver this year, and we only received Powell Butte. We didn't receive any funds for Oliver because there are additional improvements we could do at that school. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Please.
I see David's hand up, but I was wondering too, the question if Scott is on the call still. I see Scott's screen, but I don't know if he has any more insight. It seems like he knows quite a bit about seismic grants and things of that sort. Maybe he could provide some insight to that question.
In regards to the seismic improvements and the grants?
Yes, I'm happy to if you would like.
Go ahead,
Stu.
Okay. So the Oregon Seismic Rehabilitation Grant Program, there's specific eligibility criteria that they have. Director Southerton, it's ORS 455.400. Just a public document folks can read. It does have pretty specific stipulations, but to summarize, it says buildings with a capacity of 250 or more persons that are routinely used for student activities by kindergarten through grade 12 public schools. It has excluded in the past stadiums because they don't view that as a capacity, a seat. They don't view seating capacity the same as they do occupied capacity, if you will. So it doesn't matter if your bleachers serve 2,000 people, it's how many people are actually occupying the facility, which gets down to your team rooms and the like. So if we look at the capacity of 250, we might be pressed to do that in just, in a couple, 2-3 team rooms would be my guess. Again, it has to go through the lens of the state, which isn't in any of our control. And to Director Southerton's comment is we went after Oliver and Powell Butte. We just got Powell Butte. In fact, last year we went after Pleasant Valley and Oliver, and we got Pleasant Valley. So if I were Oliver, I wouldn't take that personally. But they're looking at candidates that really maximize their impact to students, if you will. So yeah, I think they look at that for scrutiny. My understanding is they do 2 passes, which are obvious to sort of pass on, and then which require more scrutiny to get down to whatever their available budget is. So a stadium would be a hard sell for a grant in its current language.
So much. Director Lynn?
Sure, yeah, just to make a few points in support of the motion. We had the original 715, seemed like it was agreed to. It seemed like we were going to look for alternative funds there if the bond oversight committee wanted to collaborate with us on that. But then the other issues were above and beyond that. And that doesn't seem to be an issue that is a slight or a bond oversight committee issue, unless they identify it as something below the line or something identifiable that they want to reach out to us and fund for. The second, we've heard consistently this full year on the board, how from the top to the bottom in our district sees our athletic facilities as shameful and left behind and something that is an unfulfilled promise from past boards. Heard it consistently from the athletic director down to parents. So it seems like it's important to do, and it's something that people are expecting us to follow through on our promises. And then the policy, we keep talking about policies around the board reserve fund. And in my mind, it's kind of a waste of time because we keep trying to talk about ways to tie our hands or somehow tie the hands of future boards, which we cannot do, on this amount of money that can be spent for school district purposes. So really, I mean, if this motion passes, then that policy was a waste of those people's time at the time it was passed. Because if we have decisions that we need to make, we're going to make them at this moment, not based on what the previous board decided. And future boards will look at the same decisions and need to make it at that time. So those were my points for the motion.
Thank you, Director Lynn. Director Harden, do you have anything?
Yes, I have a lot of points. You know, this is a tough one. I don't want us to lose sight that the bond reserve fund is a one-time money. It's not coming back. It was through the property sales. We do need to be very, very careful how we spend that money. That's one point. Another point I have is that, you know, we want these tasks to happen, and I feel we all acknowledge that they need to happen. And it kind of is, it may be a little bit going the cart in front of the horse. Like we are putting our neck out there because in the end, it would come out of the bond reserve fund. And that $7 million line is something that's very important to our credit. It's important. It is an important number to keep. We can't, it can't be overlooked, and it is tempting because the money's there. But that, you know, I have confidence. The reason that I believe in the motion as it is I have confidence we can find alternative methods of funding this. And if approving it tonight gets the ball rolling, then it's like, okay, guys, let's go find some other funding. You know, we need to find it somewhere. I don't know where right off the top of my head either right now, but it's kind of, I'm willing to make that leap of faith. And my final point is, this is a motion to be excited about. This is the motion that's been a long time coming for the community. And I don't want it to start out with contention between the board, between the community, between anybody. So, you know, if it brings the spirit back to it to go to 715 and then look for funds before we do the add-ons, I'm willing to do that. But I'm also willing, I think we can do it at 1.4. I think we can find alternative funding for other than the bond reserve fund. And that's why, you know, I would be willing to go back to the original 715. Let's, you know, maintain the community spirit of it all. Like I mean, that 715 isn't small. It's not a small piece that we're using. It's not having the upgrades. I mean, this is, you know, first or second time I've heard of the upgrades. So I'm okay if they need to wait for another day. I think we can do it. If I don't want to slow the thing down, you know, I don't want to go back to it. Like, I'd add the track right now. I mean, I'm the wrong guy to talk to about this because I'm ready phase 2. Let's go. But I understand the fiscal responsibility that we have as a board. And the bond reserve fund is one-time money. It's not coming back, especially in large sums. So I don't want to lose the spirit of it. This is a moment we should all be celebrating together. We should celebrate this as a community. We're going to get a field. We just approved that. The seismic improvements to the stadium. This is great stuff. And so, you know, if not going for the upgrades, gets that spirit back that we lost for 15 minutes, then let's do it. Let's just do it. Okay, if that makes everyone feel better, I really think we can do it. I think we can do the add-ons.
Thank you. Let's see, who has not had a chance to speak yet? Vice Chair Fuller, is there anything you would like to say? No, sorry. Would you like some? Yeah, please.
I do want to acknowledge Director Lynn. You are correct. The Bond Oversight Committee really does only apply to the bond funds. And so if we're planning on taking this out of the board reserve account, they don't have any specific responsibility there. We have just been sharing the information with them and getting the feel from them as community members. So Director Lynn, you're correct. The Bond Oversight Committee doesn't have any jurisdiction over the board reserve fund.
Director Shields.
I appreciate the clarification, but there is another clarification, and Director Harden, you alluded to it as well. Policies are set because it protects the financial integrity of the district. We were going to lose our bond rate. It was almost a miracle that we were able to keep it, or else the community would not be experiencing the improvements across this district that they are experiencing. Because if we had lost the bond rating, if we hadn't put into place the policy, that policy kept us at the bond rating that we got. Without it, we lost it. When we lost it, we could have lost the bond, or the bond would have been significantly lower because we would not have been able to fund it. So talking about what a board does for now and in the future, it's because we were acknowledging what we learned through the process of going so low in terms of our budget. I have stated, I don't disapprove of any of these. I just disapprove of doing it now and committing without knowing where those potential funds could come from. We started down the BOC line and having that conversation, and there may be some that 715 might not be exactly 715, because there may be, with bond oversight, some of that could come through in a safety way. But we don't know what that amount is, 10,000, 25,000, 100,000. But this is $720,000 that you're trying to commit, and lowering our amount that's in our reserve and having a financial impact for the entire district for something that, when Vice Chair Fuller was saying, but students at the high school, students haven't seen, I'm not really sure that they're going to miss the upgrade to the team rooms at this point in time, when we could be doing maybe things to the classrooms in the high school. Because we haven't looked below the line to see what we would be giving up if we went to the BOC to talk about some of these other fundings. We're not well informed enough about what our choices are at this point in time. I think that's something that we need to work on. But I would support the 715. I will not support the 1.4.
Do we have any understanding as to how needed is that seismic for that wall, the brick wall or the cement wall along the back?
And I'll invite Scott Rose to speak on that for the engineering point. Scott, are you still with us? So that was the second tier 1 seismic improvement for the back wall of the stadium that Chair Solowski had a question regarding.
Yeah, there were about 7 seismic improvements that were identified, and they were broken out into tiers 1, 2, and 3. And tier 1 was broken out in terms of the most critical, which was identified as 1A, which was the bracing of the structure, and then 1B was the back wall. All of these seismic improvements are what we call discretionary. They're not code driven, but the seismic engineer put them in order of importance or significance. He said, if you only do 1, do the bracing. If you only do 2, do the bracing in the back wall. Then they had other components aside from that. How critical is it to do the back wall? I'm not a structural engineer, but he felt that those were 2 separate activities. The structural engineer felt there were 2 separate activities, and one was certainly more important than the other. So he took the liberty of breaking them out rather than saying they had to be done concurrently, if you will. So there is a level of importance of one versus the other, but I couldn't tell you the magnitude of difference.
Thank you. All right. I feel like we are at a place where we need to really think about what our actions are going to be. And I do think that I'm definitely feeling a little trepidatious about the extra 700. That's a lot of money. And similar to Director Harden, you know, I would say that as I've sat in on ideal athletic committees and different, you know, the sports things, the community support is there. They want this. They want to build their whole community. Like there's a whole bunch of people out there that really want to see this happen. And I think that the potential is there for, you know, some type of like fundraising or booster thing. Like I really do feel like there's people out there that want this, that want to spend money on it. So I'm willing to put my neck out there and say that I think that we should go ahead and approve this right now. I don't know when the last time, honestly, any of you used those bathrooms. I've used them recently, and I mean, not just for my own comfort, but they're not great, you know, like the facilities are not great. And so I would really encourage us to go ahead and move forward. So at that point, I'm going to call for a vote. Let's go. All those in favor of the amended motion, spending 1.4 and change, raise your hand and say aye.
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 So can I note that was Director Lynn, Director Harden, and myself? Okay, all those opposed? Director Shields and Director Andrews, and those abstaining. I know, I understand. Would you like a moment to, please?
So after like really thinking and going back to like reflecting, I guess, on like my time as being a student and also hearing from the people in the community as well too. I do worry because I do know that first off, I have faith in our community that we are gonna find additional funds, because I know that even though like there's a lot of friction right now, there's so many compassionate people in this community that wants to see Centennial thrive. It's not our fault that we have been dealt the hand that we got, that we don't have many businesses in the district and that we don't have those different types of things. And it's been sliced down to like where we are now. But I remembered when I was in school and how like, even though I just remember, and excuse me, I remember when I was in school and then looking back at like the different like booster clubs and like all those things that our community had before us. And slowly, because we lost public funding with no fault of our own, we've lost that. And so, yes, I would like to see this prove. I think that we could really do it. I'm on that side, But I also want to acknowledge that we do have financial things that we have to abide by as well too. And I don't want to forget that we are also seeing our professionals, teachers, licensed teachers, support staff, everyone at that, level being severed. I do feel though that and it's a step, it's not gonna fix everything, but if we can bring community like to the forefront and the center of this and enliven people back up again, like you were saying, I really do think that this will be a start to us coming together more and really trying to fix our problems. And so with that being said, I mean, because I have faith in our community and if I have to organize my ass off after the elections and stuff like that, then I will. But I do have faith that we can be able to find that stuff. I have faith in our community for our teachers. Like, this is not just a athletic thing. This is about really bridging the gap between community and our school. Because I really do feel like we've lost that. And that's been like that since I was in school. Like, there was a lot of folks that are like, why would I want to go to Centennial? Like, we would get made fun of. And then you could tell there was no closeness, especially with the folks of color in the room. So like, if we can start by showing that by doing this and putting together and really having people, and if I have to go and talk to folks, then I will, to rally folks behind this. This can be a start. Like I said, this is not the ending of something. Like, I don't see this as, yes, it's scary. I'm not gonna lie. That's a big amount of money. But us putting forward and saying that, we will like do this, but we also need to be honest, we don't have the funds for it. And we need to find additional funding and we need the community's help. And that's what we need to put a call out for. And I would love to help with doing that. So I will go ahead and sit on the approved side for this as well too.
All right, that motion has been adopted. We will approve the CHS Stadium Seismic Improvement Project with the additional 3 items. Yay, congratulations. All right. We've got 7.1.3.
This is for consideration of the approval of the district-wide bus facilities improvement project utilizing board reserve funds from the sale of surplus property. The administration is recommending the approval of a district-wide bus facilities improvement project. As you may recall, the auxiliary bus lot was declared surplus and no longer needed for the district purposes by the board and was sold for approximately $2.1 million. During the sale, it was identified the auxiliary bus lot was no longer needed due to the long distance from the transportation facilities being larger than what was needed, experiencing issues with vandalism, theft, and other issues. However, it was also identified that the district would need to invest a portion of the proceeds to support district-wide transportation facilities at other locations due to the sale. The administration has received estimates for modifying and improving the facilities adjacent to our current transportation yard to accommodate the department's operational and storage needs. The estimated cost for these improvements is $475,000. The administration recommends the Board of Directors approves the creation of a district-wide bus facilities improvement project to be funded using board reserve funds from the sale of surplus property in the amount of $475,000.
Is there a motion on the table? Is anyone willing to put forward a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Director Harden. Thank you, Vice Chair Fuller. It's moved and seconded that we approve the district-wide bus facilities improvement project. At this point, I'd love to go around and get a feeling of where people feel on this, if they have any questions or concerns. Can we start with you, Director Harden?
No questions or concerns. We need to take care of our buses as they're a vital part of our transportation.
Director Andrews?
No questions.
Director Shields? Director Lynn? Nope. Vice Chair Fuller? All righty. And then let's go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 All right, it's unanimous. The motion has been adopted. We have approved the district-wide bus facilities improvement project. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're still on.
Indeed. So let's see, we have agenda item 7.1.6, 7.1.6. And I will find the board note here. This agenda item is for consideration of the approval of additional scope for bond projects at Pleasant Valley Elementary, Centennial High School, and Powell Butte Elementary. So not the board reserve account. This is for the bond projects account, bond reserve account. The administration and RNC management group, our bond project managers, are recommending additional scope of work be added to these three existing bond projects. Pleasant Valley drainage in the amount of $150,000, Centennial High School pool ventilation in the amount of $250,000, and Powell Butte Elementary site improvements in the amount of $200,000. Slight correction, Centennial High School pool ventilation was $250,000. I apologize. In regards to each project at Pleasant Valley, it was discovered during the demolition process of the seismic improvement project at Pleasant Valley that we have water intrusion issues on the south wall of the original structure. These issues must be addressed to prevent damage to the building and interior spaces that will be completed as part of the seismic project. Although unknown at the time of development of the bond projects, this project is part of site drainage, which was specifically called out in the bond as being addressed, being an issue to be addressed. The administration has received an estimated project cost for this additional work of $150,000, and it would be funded with overall bond contingency funds. I'm happy to discuss project by project if you have questions, or I can wait till the end if there's questions of the board.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and take a motion for all three of those.
Motion to, he's a transfer. Correct.
The administration is recommending the board of directors approves the additional above scope of work be added to the three existing bond projects and provide additional approval for additional funding in the amount of $150,000 for the Pleasant Valley project, $250,000 for the Centennial High School project, and $200,000 for the Powell Butte Elementary site improvement projects, funded by a transfer of overall bond contingency funds to the respective project budgets listed above. The overall bond contingency fund will be $4,942,914 after the transfer of funds for this work if approved by the board.
Dr. Southerton, are you wanting the, because I see they're in three separate items, but the board note reflects one group. Are you wanting to see a motion pertaining to all three coupled together, or do you want them individual?
Thank you for the question, Superintendent Owens. Originally, I was asking if there were questions on the Pleasant Valley portion of the project. But it seemed to be the consensus of the board to just go ahead and move forward as they were already familiar with maybe reading it in board book. It is one motion for all three projects. They all have equal importance. They're all approved as bond projects that need to be expanded. They all have the unanimous support of the bond oversight committee. And so it would be one motion for approving all three. I'm happy to take questions on the Pleasant Valley project as I described. If there aren't any questions, I'm happy to describe the Centennial High School project. as well as the Powell Butte project. So the board has, in case the board hasn't had time to review the motion or in case it's helpful.
Yeah, so motion to approve, the.
Well, do we want,
Wait.
do people, so hold on just 1 second before we do that. Do people want to hear the background? Can you please give us a little bit more on the background then of the CHS and Powell Butte?
I'd be happy to, Chair Solowski.
Thank you.
For Centennial High School, it was discovered that the ventilation serving the pool building is in need of extensive ductwork repairs and replacement of the actual ventilation units. The current units have far exceeded their useful life and are unable to meet the needs of the student programming in the pool operations. The administration has received an estimated project cost for this additional work of $250,000, which would be funded with overall bond contingency funds. For Powell Butte, Centennial High School, or Centennial School District, rather. We've been talking about the high school quite a bit this evening. Centennial School District just received notification of an additional seismic improvement grant award for Powell Butte Elementary in the amount of $2,500,000. So that's a total of $2.5 million grants we've now received in the last, call it 14 months, one for Pleasant Valley and this one for Powell Butte. These improvements will make our buildings safer for staff and for students during a seismic event. The overall seismic budget is expected to cost $2.8 million, requiring the district to pay the amount above the grant proceeds, $300,000. However, included in this amount is approximately $100,000 of roofing repairs, which were already included as part of the Powell Butte improvement project, which are now unnecessary because we're going to be doing the seismic grant. So we would have to tear off a perfectly good roof and redo the sheathing underneath for seismic bracing. And so we are able to save that $100,000 from the bond project for Powell Butte, reallocate it for the Powell Butte seismic project, same school and same roof. The money will actually still be spent on the roof, but it falls within the scope of the overall seismic program. So that results in a net addition request of $200,000. So total budget, 2.8 million, grant, 2.5 million, $100,000 has already been allocated as part of a bond project for that roofing. So it's just gets taken out of the roofing repair budget and put into the seismic budget, still goes to the same roofing. And we just need to supplement it by 200,000 to get the full 2.8 million from contingency funds. So in summary, you would be approving, if that is the will of the board, $600,000 for the three projects, $150,000, $250,000, and then $200,000 for Pleasant Valley, Centennial High School, and Powell Butte respectively. And if that was approved by the board, and it has been unanimously favored by the Bond Oversight Committee, that would reduce our contingency funds, overall bond contingency funds, to $4,942,914. So just under $5 million remaining in our $7.5 million contingency. So about 67%, as we're an equal amount through with actually getting bond work done. And important to note that this would yet again be money transferred out of contingency that is for added scope. So it's not that it's a cost overrun. It's not that it's an inefficient management. It's not that even inflation, even though we know that's happening. This is just because now we're doing more great things for our buildings, for our students with the seismic repairs, having great ventilation in the pool, which is used for student programming, as well as the Pleasant Valley drainage issue, which for those of our community members and students that have been at Pleasant Valley, we know drainage has been a big issue for a long time. We're tackling a big part of that already. This is just additional work that was unknown at the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I believe we might be ready.
So, motion to approve the above additional scope of work be added to these three existing bond projects and provide approval for funding in the following amounts: Pleasant Valley's drainage, which is $150,000, Centennial High School pool ventilation, which is $250,000, and Powell Butte Elementary site improvement, which is $200,000. Funded by transfer of overall bond contingency funds to the respective projects listed above. The overall bond project contingency fund will be $4,942,914 after the transfer of funds for this work.
Thank you. Is there a second? Excellent. It is moved and seconded that we move forward with the approval of these 3 existing bond projects. Let's go around the room and just see if there's any questions or concerns before we take a vote. Vice Chair Fuller, would you like to share anything? Your questions?
No, thank you so much. This is very helpful.
Thank you. Director Shields. Director Andrews.
No questions.
Director Lynn.
No.
Great. Let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approving the additional waterproofing, ventilation, and seismic scope for the 3 schools listed, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Please note that the ayes have it. The motion is adopted and you have approval for waterproofing scope for Pleasant Valley, ventilation scope for CHS, and seismic scope for Powell Butte Elementary. Moving on to new business. All right. We have a word. And I believe, does everyone have a copy of the section? Fantastic. So we're gonna take a moment.
Our candidates are in the gallery.
Okay, excellent. So can we ask one of them to the candidate to come forward and at the second one?
All right. So we're going to promote Nori and ask Roger to please exit and come back shortly. I will text you when you need to come back. I'm waiting for Roger to.
Oh,
there we go. Okay.
And is Dory gonna promote to panelist?
I just did.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi there and welcome, Nori. Is that what you would like to be called? Your preferred name?
And Nori, if you don't mind, can you unmute yourself? And if you're comfortable
yes.
with it, can
Yeah.
we see you?
Yeah,
can
sure.
Your camera.
There you go.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you can call me Nori. It's easier. Noridin is too long for people.
Okay. Well,
Half of
welcome,
the
Nori.
alphabet.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
At this point, we've got a couple of folks that have questions for you. They may sound a
Yeah,
little
sure.
bit familiar, but we are excited to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
So Vice Chair Fuller, would you like to start?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
So my first question that I have for you is, why did you decide to apply for this position?
Okay, so I live in this district first, and I've seen some stuff in the.
Whatever.
Nori, we just lost you. Don't know if you can hear us. We just
Yeah, I
lost
can hear
There,
you.
You're back.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. So as I was saying, I live in this district, and my kids, they go to the Centennial district. So my daughter, she's in the elementary school. My son, he's in the middle school. So I've seen some stuff. I look when I was going to schools, and I see that noticed some of the buildings, they need some upgrades and some stuff. And the thing is, like, even if I talk to
We're struggling with the connection, Nori. And we can't hear you.
here. Can you? Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to be involved with the district and see and have an idea on what's going on and what's the work is put in our districts and how we can improve. If I can participate with other ideas and some other check all the procedures and some other.
We've lost you again, your audio.
I think I have a bad connection today. Let me check if I can switch it to my phone and that will be easier probably. Oh, the kids are taking all the connections with these videos that they are doing now.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
All right. And are you back?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I had to switch to my to my phone. Get off my network here. Yeah, I believe. Did you guys catch any of what I was saying, or I have to start over?
It would be helpful to start over.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so as I mentioned, I live in this district. I moved in this district in 2015, and I have my kids going to my daughter. She's in the elementary school here in Butler Creek, and my son, he's in the middle school, the Centennial. So I've seen these schools, how they are, and what's happening with all the crowd, and there is like they're really crowded with the kids, and the state of the buildings and stuff. And I always try to mention something to the principals and talk to them and get a conversation and see what's happening with the districts. But really, I'm applying for this job to be involved with the district, with the board members, so I can be aware and see really what's happening in our districts and what's going on with our schools and where we are going and how we can improve or implement. And I hope I can bring something to the table to help the district with with the experience I have and whatever I can provide. So that's why I applied for this position.
Thank you so much. Director Shields.
Hi, Nora, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
You want to go ahead and do the question? Or Nora, can you hear it, the question?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Let's go to the second question then. What is your understanding of a board, school board's basic duties and our basic responsibilities?
Okay, so I believe the board have the responsibility of the district, so they are the decision makers, and pretty much one of actually the board function is like appoint the superintendent for the district, and they oversee the district the district progress, and they are pretty much managing all the schools and the district, and they are managing the procedures, coming up with the procedures and overseeing the projects, and see where you can improve each school and what its needs, and going from there.
Thank you so much. Director Harden.
Hello, Nori. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Thank you. What are the two most critical issues currently facing our school district, and what is the basis of your thinking?
So for I believe I mentioned this when I was for my first question. So I believe the school district, they have issues with the buildings. They are deteriorated. They're old buildings. They need upgrades, and they need a lot of work. And the second one, I believe that's we have overcrowded schools. Like pretty much, I believe over in the middle school right now, from what I've heard, because I talked to some people, we have around like 900 people. And even the middle school has like just the 7th and 8th grade. And in our elementary school here in Butler Creek, I believe they had like, last time I heard there was like about like 500 or over 500. That's a lot for it. And especially they have 6th grade there. But from the new restructure that the school district start doing right now, so they're going to get another middle school, so they can remove the 6th grades from, I believe, a 6th grade from the Butler Creek to go in there, and all the restructuring that are going right now with the zoning and stuff. I believe that that can help with the crowd, and especially our community here. It's growing really fast, and you can see if you are driving around Pleasant Valley or Gresham area, wherever you go, there is a lot of buildings coming up, and you can imagine every single house, wherever we can put average of 2 kids just there, and you can see the number that we are going facing in the future. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Director Andrews.
Hello, Nori.
Hi.
My question is, the board works together to prepare a strategic plan for the district. What initiatives would you raise as a board member for our next strategic plan for the district?
So beside the projects that are ongoing right now, as I believe one of the major one you have is coming up in the high school, the Centennial High School. I can I can add to because I had some notes when I was looking at I believe the PowerPoint for the project, what's happening, what the money is getting spent and what it is going. So I had some reservation about some stuff in that project, and I see that they split a lot of stuff. They should be really putting it together instead of splitting it in half or whatever, because it's going under one process. If you're going to split one process in 2 phases, sometimes it's hard. It's extra fees you are to pay for that. But if you merge everything there, you might be able to do that. So my thing is, like, I can add to some of the projects. I can oversee what's happening and have an ideas with the process and the procedures and how it is going, and I can try to implement some stuff or come up with some ideas to implement whatever process and procedures that the districts are working on.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'm curious, do you have any questions for us?
So the only question is, if it happens, I get selected or whatever, is there any coaching and any ideas, any help that I can get from the other board members, or any procedures that I need to learn about? And yeah, that's part of it. And one more thing is like mainly, are the board members allowed to go walk through the schools and visit schools and see what's happening, and if something needed, so they can have notes and for process or whatever is coming up in the agenda and the future meetings and
That's
stuff?
great.
That's pretty much.
Good questions. I would say that you're definitely going to get some support. There's definitely a lot of reading, a lot of policies and things to get caught up on. And then, you know, we're definitely, yeah, I'm still new too, there, you know, and there's so there's a lot of mentoring that happens and a lot of connection that happens as well. So you wouldn't be just, it's not just sink or swim.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But maybe could I ask you to elaborate a little on the second part of his question about visiting schools?
Yeah, and I would also add, Nori, to the, good to see you, by the way. To
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Response that Chair Szalowski gave is that we had 2 board trainings with board trainer from the School Boards Association, from the statewide organization. Those are recorded and available on our YouTube channel. And so that would be something I think would be valuable to go back and review, because I think it gives a good baseline orientation for school board work. And those are available and could be part of the kind of onboarding piece as well. As far as going into schools for visits, that's fine as long as they're pre-scheduled and the administrator of the school knows that you're coming. Those are normally scheduled through the superintendent secretary, who then contacts the school and then arranges a good time, because it's helpful to have the administrator give you a tour of the school so that you can get some commentary from the administrator as to what's happening at the school, rather than just walking around on your own, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course, I understand. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. At this point, let's go ahead and we'll interview our other candidates. And Nori, if you don't mind leaving the Zoom call, and then we'll text you when it's time to come back.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to interview for this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
I just sent Roger a text. He should be joining us shortly. He has joined us, and he should be appearing in the panelists shortly. There he is.
Hello and welcome, Roger.
Roger, can you unmute yourself? And if you're comfortable with it, we'd love to see your lovely face.
Okay. I can work this. I'm not particularly high tech. Okay, start video. Oh, that's what happens when I don't have my glasses. There we are.
Hey, Roger.
Good evening.
Welcome. We've got a couple of questions for you today, and then we're going to allow some space at the end for you to ask questions of us.
Okay.
So we'll jump right in. Vice Chair Fuller.
All right, hi, Roger. So why did you decide to apply for this position?
I'll be very honest. My wife challenged me to do it. I have never done anything like this before. It appeals to me to give back to the community that we have lived in for 9 years. I am acutely conscious of the motto at the school, once an eagle, always an eagle. My wife is an example of that. She is a 75 alumna of Centennial High School. when she entered the workforce after a number of years, she chose to begin again and at the district, and she is currently a classified employee, educational assistant. So that's my skin in the game, as the cliche goes. I am acutely interested in promoting collaboration and accountability, and I feel that keenly, and I would like to contribute to that in a positive way, if I may. I always recall a couple of my high school teachers telling me, it was popular cliche back then in the 70s, and I'm dating myself, that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I would like to be part of the solution.
Thank you very much, Roger. Sorry.
That's all right.
Director Shields.
Hi, Roger. Here's my question for you.
Sure.
What is your understanding of a school board's basic duties and our basic responsibilities?
To administer the budget per Oregon law statutes. You have a statutory obligation to administer taxpayer funding, state funding, and to also oversee the educational and operational aspects of the schools in the district.
Thank you very much. Director Hardin, question 3.
Yes. What are the 2 most critical issues currently facing our school district? And what is the basis of your thinking?
I would have to say the most critical issues facing Centennial is, as Director Fuller alluded to earlier, we haven't been exactly dealt the best hand financial wise, where the district is located, the support, the sense of community. I see that as a point to build on, reigniting the sense of community, not just through athletics. And granted, that is a big part of Centennial's heritage, is an important factor to a lot of students and their families. But I am also equally aware of the need to reinforce the academic side as well. I feel that's a critical issue facing the schools, is rekindling the sense of community in Centennial along the academic as well as the athletic lines. Caught my attention when the superintendent was giving his report, when Dr. Owens was giving year end, how difficult it was to transition from distance learning to hybrid to in-person at the school. There was a lot of things in the day-to-day operation that they were contending with: staff absences, coverage, shuffling faculty, shuffling staff. I would like to make sure that all in the Centennial community, the district, the school administrators, the teachers, the classified staff, feel appreciated and needed and encouraged to do their best to increase the morale. And most of all, I am conscious of servicing the students in the best possible way, at the same time being accountable to the parent, voter, taxpayers in the district as well. I think those are critical issues facing Centennial.
Thank you very much. Director Andrews.
The board works together to prepare a strategic plan for the district. What initiatives would you raise as a board member for our next strategic plan?
Strategic plan should include not only advocacy for equity, diversity, improved student learning, but it should also include making sure that whatever track the student is on, whether it's diploma, certificate, alternative path, whatever the student's track is on, that Centennial should incorporate in their strategic plans things designed to give all their students as much assistance, support, help as needed during the high school process, and enabling them to be successful after graduation, whatever college or career or trade path they elect to embark on after high school. I feel that's a definite that should be a definite component of any strategic plan down the line for the district.
Thank you so much. So what, do you have any, those wrap up all of our questions. Do you have any questions for us that you'd like to ask?
None that came to mind. I am extremely heartened by the thoroughness of the presentations from the superintendent, the administrative officials, and the allowance for time for discussions, for questioning of things, being frank and transparent about disagreements, as well as finding ways to collaborate. It's been an eye-opener to me. I have not sat in on a meeting like this, I'll have to confess, in quite a long time. And to me, it exemplifies what our country, what our society is all about, is that we are blessed and privileged to live in a country where citizens, residents, everyday people can work together to achieve an end. And the prospect of doing that is part of what challenged me to apply for this. So I thank you very much for your folks' time.
Thank you so much, Roger, for your time. I really appreciate it. At this point, I believe we'll ask, I think, do we go into executive session?
Not executive session, but you would do a blind vote, not a secret ballot.
Right.
So, yeah.
So let's go ahead. Roger, can we ask you to step out of the meeting
Yes.
for a little while?
Yes, I will do it right now.
And then we'll definitely call you guys both back.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we're going to do a blind vote, which doesn't mean that we're not looking. It means that, remind me.
So basically what you'll do is you'll, if you have a slip of paper or whatnot, you know, the bottom of your sheet here or whatever, put your name on it, put your preferred candidate's name on it, and then we'll slip them over to Pam, who will share out the results. David will want to probably text his
Pam.
selection to Pam. And then once all of the selections have been submitted to Pam, she'll start reading off at random which director and which selections.
We are allowed to ask questions of each other. So,
Oh yeah, do we want to?
I mean, we can have a discussion.
I would love to open that up if. Yeah, I would love to hear what thoughts are, or if there's anything that you would like to say for the good of the board before we get started.
Did you have an opportunity to discuss the position with either of the candidates, and did you have some impressions that you'd like to share with us?
I did have the opportunity to speak with Nori ahead of time. And you know, I think what stood out to me with him was definitely some enthusiasm for the role. I did not have a chance to connect with Roger beforehand. But my impression from the interview is that he does seem to have a good hold on what the school district is facing. And I'm not sure if that came across in Nori's interview. Any other, but do you have questions of each other?
Just, I appreciate your sharing that. Just the final comments, I guess, of Rogers about just citizenry, right? And participation and being part of a process is important to all of us, right? And recognizing that we can move forward even when there's discord I thought appreciated his acknowledgement of at least watching what goes on. So often, I don't think board candidates have an idea of what really is happening in this. Although Nori also nailed it in terms of the role of the superintendent and that as well. So I think we have two very well qualified people here, and I appreciate that they're interested in serving. Because as we know, it's time and commitment and thought. So I just really, Nori and Roger, I think either one of these men would be an asset to us. So
I appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Director Lynn, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. We have two wonderful candidates. I think they would both be great. I just wanted to acknowledge that this isn't the first time Nuri has put his name forward. And I really appreciate seeing people, if they didn't make it the first time, sticking with it and really being engaged and waiting for the next opportunity. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Again, it looks like we have two great candidates.
You know, I want to just be really transparent as well and say that as we're contemplating which person will join us next on the board, I would like to bring equity into the conversation and just say that, the experiences that people bring to this position and bring to just the interview, being able to stand up and interview isn't something that everyone has had life experience in. And so I agree. I think we have two wonderful candidates, and I think that, can't be really eloquent when I say things like.
No, I want to thank you for actually stating that, because as a person that is like not your average anything when it comes to like organizing and being a leader and all that stuff, it's very like, I have anxiety when it comes to interviews. So like, I totally appreciate you pointing that out and different things like that. So I think we have two wonderful candidates as well. And I think we would look forward to having either both of them.
Excellent. Unless there's anything else I'm seeing, let's go ahead and start our blind vote. David, you want to go ahead and text Pam, and the rest of us will.
The following board people have voted for Nori. We have Claudia, Jess, Rose, Erica, and David. And Pam Shields voted for Roger. So it appears that Nori has won.
Congratulations. So at this point, after the meeting, I'll give them a call. Is that kind of, what are we? I think that's what happened with,
Yeah.
after the meeting, I got a call. Okay. Then I will take care of the communication. I'll call both of them after the meeting and let them know. All right, moving right along. Where are we at? 7.2.2, Director Callahan. Please join us. Yes.
I just want you to be cognizant of the time and keep in mind that we have an executive session afterwards. So
Should I excuse
This-
myself for this part?
this, I don't know. It's up to you. You do have a 10 o'clock deadline where you have to revote or you all vote and decide to go past 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So keep that in
Why
mind.
don't I step
as you're
out and you
marching
guys,
through
we have a
this.
quorum without me, so why don't you guys keep working and I will reach out to the candidates.
That's not it.
Oh.
I'm just thinking about the time and the agenda and the executive session.
Oh.
So
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Sorry.
I don't,
Should,
I don't want to, you may want to drop some of the things on the agenda or vote to go long.
all
There you
right.
go.
That is great. Can I get a little bit of consensus?
Until we get, let's see how far we get, because it depends on the number of questions, and then we can ask us if we want to go past this.
Great.
Yeah.
Forward roll.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest if
Oh.
we keep it
David?
mostly, if we could keep it to the title and a quick summary and then move to questions, that might help us move faster.
Wonderful suggestion.
Okay, good evening, Board of Directors. So I am requesting approval for world language adoption, along with your approval to not exceed $250,000 for the purchase of. In 2021, 2021, districts were scheduled to review and adopt world language curriculum, which is Division 22 requirement. We followed a similar process that we followed for language arts and ELD. However, it was abbreviated given the number of teachers and the scope of the work. And so they really were charged with analyzing state curriculum individually based on their content areas, and then also collectively for Spanish. As it's reflected in the board note, French and Spanish AP have selected the Vista Higher Learning publisher. Spanish 1 and 2, they've selected Savas, and American Sign Language has selected Dawn Sign Press. I also note that between that French and American Sign Language, they did not, the state list provided to them did not capture what they needed. And so both of those are independent adoptions, and they still went through all the scoring to meet the needs. I'll leave it there unless
Great.
there's questions.
Going around the room, raise your hand if you have any questions. Hearing none, let's go ahead and can we hear a motion?
A motion to approve the adoption for the world language instruction with the cost of materials not to exceed $250,000.
Second.
I'll second.
Excellent. It's moved and seconded that we approve the curriculum materials and purchase of the world language curriculum. All those in favor, sorry.
Aye.
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 It is unanimous. The ayes have it. We have approved the curriculum material and purchase of world language. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. They've missed you.
Did you all enjoy your break? From me, from me. Thank you, Chair Slawski. So we have a policy to consider approving the change. This is policy DH for reference, which is in regards to loss coverage. As the board note states, policy DH was previously titled bonded employees and officers and has been updated to loss coverage in language revised to reflect current terms and practices. Policy EEAB, school bus scheduling and routing, has also been recoded to EEA-AR and is now an administrative regulation policy for policy EEA, student transport services. Additionally, language referencing student personnel used of school buses for transportation has been removed to avoid potential tax implication or ethics. It's recommended that the board consider adopting this policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Great. Let's go ahead and get a motion.
I motion to approve policy DH loss of coverage.
Second.
David seconds. Director Lynn, sorry. Excellent. It's moved and seconded that we approve this. Let's go ahead and take it for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. The ayes have it. Congratulations. You won the lottery. I don't know. It's like, yeah. Lost coverage.
Yeah.
Losing our minds, folks. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Okay. Seeking your approval of policy IBGI, which is bilingual education. As the board note describes, in 2021, the Oregon legislature updated with the House Bill 2056, which modified the Oregon diploma requirements by changing English language arts to language arts. So the language change in the actual policy is to remove the word English. Also, in Senate Bill 744, they suspended the requirement for a student to show proficiency using essential skills as a condition for receiving that high school diploma. That is suspended from now through the 23-24 school year. And so the language also shows not so much in this policy, but it's going to come up in the next one in terms of the removal of essential skills. So this is a required adoption is required for the revision of this policy. And yes, so recommending the approval of this policy.
Are there any questions? Fantastic. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve the policy IBGI, bilingual education as stated.
All right, Director Andrews, we got a first, we got a second. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. The ayes have it. We have approved policy IBGI.
Okay. Next, seeking your approval of policy IL, which is our assessment program. Senate Bill 602 in 2021 made students' choice to opt out of the statewide summative assessment permanent and requires them to opt out annually. And so that is the language that is changed in the policy. In addition to that, the policy is also impacted by the Senate Bill 744 with the essential skills, where you can see all of wherever it says essential skills is striked out. And recommending the approval of this policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? We get a motion.
Motion to approve.
Approve policy IL assessment program.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. We have approved policy IL. The ayes have it. Welcome. Go ahead. Excellent. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve. Policy GBA.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. The ayes have it. We have approved policy GBA. Mhm. Excellent. Any questions?
Motion to approve GBA. Workplace harassment.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 The ayes have it. It's unanimous. We have approved policy GBEA. Yep.
The application received CARES Act consolidation of policy GBL. Resulting in changes with approved distribution of GBLA and review of changes made model sample policy GBL on personnel records. They primarily revolve around records requests constructed in place in the district. Disclose information to prospective employees.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? No.
Motion to approve GBL personal records.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It's unanimous. We have approved policy GBL.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctors.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good evening, board members. All right, I am here with policy IGBAF, the AR for special education IEP. As you can see, House Bill 3183 was passed. And with that, it specifically asks that school districts during an IEP meeting share information with families if they have a child who is deaf or hard of hearing about placements and services that are offered in the district, the ESD regional programs, or at the Oregon School for the Deaf. They also added House Bill 2105, which requires districts to share information with families who have transition age students. So we can start as early as 14, no later than 16. We need to share information with the student and the family around a less restrictive option to guardianship. So that has to do with supported decision-making for students. And then also in October of 2021, you can see that there was an administrative rule that includes sharing information, again, no sooner than 14, no later than 16, around supported employment services for students as a part of the transition conversation. This policy is required, and I ask that you approve it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Please.
Which parts? Because there's a couple, for students who are deaf or hard of hearing or transition age students. So technically we have to talk every student during their 15, when they turn 15, because they'll be 16. So that is at least a third to 2/3 of our caseload. So yeah. So special education case managers have conversations about transition. And so this will add a little bit of additional information, but it's already a part of the process, thinking about post-secondary outcomes, what happens when students turn 18 or 21 regarding services. So this enhances that information for both families and students about what's available and what the state is helping to support as well. Yes, I mean, it's a part of the conversation that our staff, yes, yeah, we'll have to just provide some additional training and reminders to share the information. Yeah, right, yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Motion to approve the policy IBG, wait, oh, that's it wrong. IGBAFAR Special Ed IEP.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 The ayes have it unanimously. We have approved policy IGBAFAR Special Ed IEP.
All right, great. The next policy, AR, you can see has the same exact information shared within the reason why they're updating this policy. And so this is the other ones for IEPs. These are procedural safeguards. It's also a part of the process and information they just want to make sure we're sharing with families and students. This policy is also required.
Excellent. Questions at this point?
Motion to approve IGBAG.
I just had a
AR
quick-
Special Ed Procedural Safeguards.
Second.
I just had a
All
quick.
those in favor, oh wait, Director Lynn, please.
Yes, thank you. I just had a quick comment. It's a long policy, and I'm certainly no IEP expert. My family is not one that utilizes services, but I feel that's all the more important to educate myself on these policies. And I'm just concerned always that when we're talking about IEP meetings, when we talk about services being delivered and coordinated, that we're making sure that the professionals trained to do the therapy are the ones being selected to do it, and it's not being kind of like coordinated or like put off onto a teacher or an educational assistant, or that we're not even offering those services and not taking advantage of potential Medicaid money or stuff like that if we can hire more professionals. So that's just a concern I have, and I'm learning, eager to learn more about it.
Sure, I'm happy to speak to parts of that. So within the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDA, there are certain parameters around who can and who can't implement services, as well as who can and can't craft those services, just like a teacher makes a lesson plan. Our special education staff, the learning specialists, our speech path, school psychologists have requirements around that. And then they can partner with classroom teachers to provide supports. They can partner with educational assistants to provide that. And those are all conversations that should be taking place within an IEP meeting. And then they also are having conversations. Does this student need to work with an occupational therapist, a physical therapist? And so there are some resources and instruction that some students have to have provided by specific individuals also.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Questions? Additional questions? Great. Did we have a motion?
I didn't.
Great. And second? Okay.
I think so.
Director Andrews?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. The ayes have it. We're passing IGB. You are correct as far as let's just move. We're moving. We have one more for you, please.
We do. We have the last one, and this is for consideration of approval policy IJ for school counseling programs. And you can see this policy is very similar to policies that Dr. Kutsuya brought, and that they are revising the statutory definition of sexual orientation, removing gender identity, and have added the new definition. This policy is highly recommended. It is a policy that we've currently had, and in the board example for the policy, you can see that the updated language was added.
Questions? All those, motion.
And I highly motion, policy IJ, the school counseling program.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. The motion has passed. Approved policy IJ. Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we've got 3 minutes. We can do this, folks. Future agenda items. I just want to check in and mention that talking about having the board retreat during the day on August 17th instead of in the evening. We're able to secure a spot at Edgefield. We'd like to do it during the day because there is a concert on site that evening. And so we'd like to have lunch and do our board meeting and our board training with Vince that day. More information to come, but I just wanted to put it in the pocket of everyone. Do you have any future agenda items you'd like to cover?
Yeah, we could talk in July about the August and what we have on tap for that retreat day. But as far as future agenda items, as we go into the new fiscal year, we have the election, a board officer election. We'll see if we can't get board zone revisions to the board by that point. Introduce the new Powell Butte principal, Jared Austin. Introduce the to be determined CHS athletic director and assistant principal. We should be looking at revised substitute rates for the coming year. And there may be some high school calendar revisions that we need to take a look at as well. So that's what's on the horizon.
Great. Anything else from anyone else?
I do want to give a heads up that I'm sure, as you all know, the SCOTUS decision is going to be coming down soon. I work in the reproductive health field. I am going to be off the first 2 weeks of July, but will be mostly in Washington until Washington's primary is August 2nd. So I will be in the fold, in the thick of it, but I will be trying to communicate as fast as I can. If you need me, please text or call, because that's probably gonna be the best way to get to me at this time. So just wanted to let you guys know about that.
Thank you, and thank you for your hard work. All right, everyone, 9:59. The meeting is adjourned.